Good evening and welcome to the 21st meeting of fiscal year 2017. I'm Brian Furs, Chair of the Milton Planning Board. I'm going to ask my fellow members to introduce themselves, starting with my right.
Alex Whiteside, I'm a member.
April Lamoureux, member.
Julia Getman, clerk.
William Clark, Planning Director.
Denny Swenson, new member.
Cheryl Tagayas, member.
And it's my duty now to introduce, as she just did, Denny Swenson, who's our newest member, and welcome her to the board. And we have an exciting thing to launch with you tonight, a special permit application, so we're getting right down to business with you. So, welcome.
Thank you.
I know that you're familiar with how we work here. So. We have a couple of administrative items. Our next meeting dates are town meeting, May 1st, 2nd, 4th, 8th, 9th, etc., until we're done. And then we have a regularly scheduled meeting May 11th, which hopefully we will have concluded town meeting by then. We'll not have to reschedule that. We have some minutes to approve, Julia?
I have made some changes, which you can pass around and look at it and see what you think.
Can you just hold that up for a second so I can... That they were more severe than that. All right, so we'll pass those around and we'll come back to that.
More severe?
Yeah, I just was going
Not too
to postpone
severe.
it to the next one, but that looks good. All right, so we'll pass those around. While we're looking at that, we have a public hearing this evening at 7:15 for the Wentworth Farm Estates Cluster Development. And that's at 7:15. We're also going to have some old business discussion on the master plan implementation, a next step discussion, and a member replacement vote. So while we're waiting for the minutes, we'd like to go into citizen speak. And if you're here to discuss anything that has not already been announced tonight as an agenda item, please feel free to come forward.
One thing is that we're not going to meet early before
Oh, that's right.
town meeting.
Yeah, so thank you for reminding us of that. We are not, unless something comes up tonight or over the next couple of days, we will not be meeting at 6:30 on May 1st. We'll just start at 7:30 for the rest of the time.
Good.
Okay, Mr. Corcoran.
Good evening, Ned Corcoran, 70 Morton Road, and I have two things tonight. First is I want to congratulate Denny and welcome you to the board. You ran a great campaign, and I really look forward to working with you over the next 5 years plus with a lot of exciting stuff.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you too.
Absolutely. And the second is to remind people who may be watching that there is a site walk on the Carberry property at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. It's the second of two that we invited town meeting members to specifically, but it's open to all. And so we'd welcome people to a site walk at the middle driveway at the Carberry property, 1702 Canton Avenue, 9 o'clock Saturday. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Earl Fay, 45 Annapolis Road, and Precinct 1 town meeting member. My first chance to have comments with respect to Article 51 in the Great Estates Planned Unit Development. I did take advantage of the site walk from the week or two ago, which Ned has just invited folks to. I would highly recommend it if they didn't get a chance. It was wonderful and very informative. Some of you folks might know that I have a great affinity for the affordable housing and the fact that, my opinion, Milton hasn't done quite enough in that area of affordable housing. And I've been trying to push that a little bit over time, and we have this established standard of 10%, which I think we might push and eventually get to that 11 or 12% number. At the site walk, I had an opportunity to discuss the thought that Mr. Dolly had with respect to having units off-site, and which I think is terrific. Buying distressed properties and building them for affordable units, rehabbing them and so on is terrific, and identifying them for young families. I think it's wonderful, and I completely support it. I asked him what's the opportunity to develop one more unit. Is there an opportunity for that? And particularly since there might be that opportunity for younger families, but not necessarily for their recent retiree who may not otherwise be able to afford to stay. And this property gives us that unique opportunity. There is a cottage on this property, And that cottage is located near that tennis court, and it's opposite on the, what's known as building number 29. That cottage is inhabitable now. It's in good condition. So we discussed that opportunity. And Mr. Dolly did say he would support that. He would support taking that one particular unit, that one existing property, keeping it as it is. If it required any work inside, he would do it, and then have it as a age-specific, following the rest of the age 55 development, and have that one unit as an affordable unit, age-restricted. If I brought it to the board, he pledged his support for that. We can maintain the 10%. Nothing else in the bylaw would need to change, other than identifying that one particular property. I don't know if that was brought to anybody's attention. I did email Mr. Clark with that suggestion. So I do intend to raise that at town meeting as an amendment to the article. Given his support and his pledged support, I hope that possibly we could think it through as a planning board to see, is it possible to add that and amend the article? If not, I do intend to bring it up, and hopefully the board would agree to add that as a potential friendly amendment. Thank you.
Well, there would be a number of changes, because you'd have to presumably increase the size of the development to 59 units, and that would be outside the scope of the article, quite possibly.
Well, it would still be 58 units. It would, nothing would
Well,
change. Those
I-
buildings would stay the same.
Right, but you would remove one market rate unit from the mix.
No, sir, you would not.
We're not
Well,
going
we're
to get
not
into
gonna
a
debate
debate
that,
about
but
tonight,
that's not
Mr.
the
Corcoran, but
intention.
I'll mention it.
Sure, I just want to,
I'll deal with
the
it.
record is clear on, because Alex is right.
I understand he's right. I'm going to clear that up for you. So I did talk to the applicant today about this, and I appreciate you bringing it forward to give us some time to think about it. But my understanding is that the support for the 7th affordable unit is contingent upon adding a unit, so that the unit count would go to 59. So a couple of things that you'll want to check on is whether that would be within the scope of the article. You can check that with the moderator or the warrant committee, or you can talk to town council to find out if that would be within the scope. And then, we can kind of go from there. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention so that we're clear on that point. Because right now, the zoning only allows for 58 units. This would bump it to 59 if we did that. So we just need to find out if we're allowed to increase the unit count based on the scope of the article.
So the board would consider it, should it be?
I'm not saying the board would consider it. We would, if it's put on the floor as a motion to amend, then we would consider it. I'm not saying we would support it, but we'd certainly consider it. The question is whether it's going to be in scope.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And
Sure.
I guess my support depends on how, on that status, but I appreciate your thought. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Anybody else for citizens speak this evening? Okay, Mr. Clark, why don't we do a quick report from you of anything you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's go into your stuff while we wait for 7:15.
We had an animal shelter programming meeting last Saturday, 8 to 1, here at Town Hall. It's moving ahead. We should have a programming for the new shelter within the next month, and then we'll get into design right after that. I have been reviewing a site plan approval for 333 Brush Hill. One of the units up there wants to come before the board to put a 3-season porch on there. That will be on the agenda for May 11th. I have 5 different A&Rs coming in May and June, so you're going to see a lot of those coming. I have one A&R that the board did for 591 Blue Hill Ave, that the engineer made a mistake when he did his angle. He needs to come back and switch 235 square feet on either end of the angle. Mr. Hannigan will be here for that, the 11th. I want the board to know now that we need a new member for the Telecommunications Design Review Committee, which is wireless communication. Mike Kelly was our representative. We're going to need a new rep for that. We don't have anything forthcoming, but potentially we do.
Do we have any volunteers?
I'm sorry?
Do we have any volunteers?
Start appointing people if you don't.
I'll think about it.
Can you put that on the agenda for the next meeting, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's why I said I want to tell you now.
Give it
because
some
we
good
have
thought,
to-
Denny.
Brian,
It's a softball. It's really a softball.
should, sorry, may I just, in light of that, should we at least review what
We should
committees we
review
all are on?
can we do a community
and-
review? We usually do
Oh.
that following town meeting, so why don't we do a full committee review? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be great, thank you.
That's what happens when nobody speaks up. Now you all get something new. Master plan implementation meeting met. They're going to have their report for town meeting. Jill Kathleen Way, I've reviewed 2 landscape plans for 2 different parcels in there. Still have to do a few more things in there, but those houses are progressing along fairly fast. The Pulte closeout issues, been dealing with the stormwater going back to Lisa Eggleston, the DCR access issues, and working with Mike Dennehy on the selectmen issues for that closeout.
Okay.
Working on Truman Parkway with a citizens meeting on some safety issues, looking to slow the traffic down. The Wentworth Farm review, and I guess we're going to slide right into that one now.
Yep, pretty close. We're almost there. Couple minutes.
I didn't talk enough.
Do you want to give us a update on what's going on with, or do you know what's going on with the assistant town planner hiring?
Yep. There were, to date, there were over 30 applications. That has been pared down to about 10. We're going to go and do an initial walkthrough of those 10. I think it's next Wednesday. We're waiting for Mike Dennehy to get back. He's the only one that hasn't responded. At which point we'll set up interviews if they are worthwhile. We'll take the initial review of those next week.
When you're redoing the resumes together, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Paige Ippolito is the head of HR. She did the first
Culling.
take through it. A lot of them, a lot of those 20 that were weeded out didn't really know what job they were responding to. So a lot of administrative people looking for that job. We'll go through the agendas further next week, and I'll have a better handle by the 11th.
Great, okay, thank you.
We'll have someone, and I'm guessing you, coming to the final interviews. Okay. I know you've talked to
I
Paige.
spoke to Mike Dennehy about that, yeah.
Okay, because Paige said something about it today, and we just have to work our schedule, and that's what we're doing.
Okay,
What sort of qualifications does this person need?
You gonna apply?
I mean, is any planning experience necessary?
Yes, there is planning experience necessary. The job posting is on the town's website. It was in the Beacon, which is Mass Municipal's listing, and I'm not sure where else Paige put it. But yes, that was pretty explicit what is required.
What about the mass planners? Did you give it to them?
We did give it to the listserv.
Okay.
okay.
And it's Mr. Dennehy's choice?
Oh.
Whose choice is it?
Well, ultimately, it is Mr. Dennehy's choice. Strong town administrator, yes, it is his choice. But Paige, being head of HR, has say in it, I have say in it, and someone from this board has say in it.
Okay. Very good.
But that someone should probably be appointed by the board at some point. Right?
Yeah, we can discuss that tonight if you want, is when we get to old business or new business.
Okay.
I mean, it's either is or it isn't. But it seems to me if the board is having a representative doing the choosing, then the board should select that representative.
It's fine with me.
I'm going to punt that back to the chairman.
Right,
and
we'll
he
do
said
that, we'll
okay,
do that
that's
after
it.
our 7:15.
And I have no problem with making Brian the representative. It
agree, it
just
should be
seems to me
voted.
that there
Well,
is
there may
process
be-
to be followed.
Completely agree. Sounds good to me. All right, let's move into our 7:15. We'll come back to that as new. I'm sorry, before I do that, sorry. Bill, did you have anything else? Sorry.
No.
Okay, great. All right, we're moving to our 7:15 public hearing for Wentworth Farm Estates Cluster Development. While they're getting set up, can I have a motion to approve the planning board meeting minutes for Thursday, April 13th, 2017 as amended?
So moved.
It can be hard to
And
see.
a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Sorry?
Give those to Julia.
That's the spot for the, yep.
You're welcome. Will you be referring to drawings that are within the set that we received? Okay. If you just tell us which sheets that, when you're on them, that would be helpful.
I'll put it up on the board.
Okay, great.
Disoriented being over here.
Me too.
All right, do we have anything from staff before we go to the applicant?
Yeah, you have in front of you a whole lot of handouts. There are two sets of Excel spreadsheets. One of them is for the definitive subdivision, one is for the cluster development. There is a memo that was done by Tim before he left. Both the memo has a lot of, I think they're Tim's personal feelings to some of it, and some of the items inside the spreadsheet, I don't know if he missed them or just that was his first blush and he didn't go back and check his work. I mean, one of the simple ones was in the first page, needs a scale. Every one of these plans has a scale mention on it that it's 1 inch is 40 feet.
Okay.
Some of them are going to be simple enough that, Mr. Kane and Ms. McGetrick are going to answer your questions tonight.
Okay.
I'll let them take their application. Their application was stamped in with the clerk March 17th. It was posted in the Milton Times April 13th and April 20th. And the notice was mailed to the abutters per the requirements of our zoning.
Okay. And do you have copies? Did the applicant receive copies of these?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Clark?
No.
All right. Ms. McKettrick.
Good evening. I'm Marion McKettrick. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and I have with me Jeff Kane, who is the engineer for this project, and he'll probably be doing a fair amount of the talking tonight, explain the details of the plan. I just want to make a short introduction. The plan before you tonight is for a cluster development. It's named after the farm which once stood on this land, Wentworth Farm. And the application is being made under the revised cluster development bylaw, which was passed in 2014. We have met with you several times informally over the past year to discuss this proposal, to try to get advice about how to proceed. We did follow your advice, and we completed our application with the Conservation Commission for approval of work, including a stormwater drainage plan. And the commission has approved these plans in an order of conditions on December 15th, 2016. That's in your materials, that order of conditions. There were applications submitted, there were materials submitted to the planning board in addition, which include all of the applications that went to the Conservation Commission, including the drainage plan and the notice of intent, the 401C water quality application for DEP, and the report of drainage calculations, which I provided electronically because it's 184 pages, but it is available, and Mr. Clark has it if anyone needs to go through that. These were all approved with some modifications by the Conservation Commission, prior to the issuance of the order of conditions. So this project does have a stormwater permit, an approved permit. The development design that we're presenting tonight is true to the purposes of the cluster bylaw, in that it preserves open space, wooded areas, and in general, the topography of the site. We used a careful site planning process in order to work with the neighborhood and try to take into account, create open spaces and create a development that was in harmony with the neighborhood. The design is also consistent with the town's master plan, because the master plan recognizes the importance of Milton's small-town atmosphere and its natural and historic features. And these are the things that this single-family cluster development is attempting to be, harmonious or consistent with. The key features of the design are there are 10 smaller lots. They're clustered in the center, which is at a high area of the site. There are large areas of open space on several sides. The wooded views from the street are protected. The existing unpaved right-of-way from Hillside Street is protected. The access by Wentworth Farm Road, the new access road, is designed to look like a rural street rather than a subdivision road. The development will generate a substantial increase in property tax value, and the development has the potential to provide sufficient profit to support the creation of this access, which is through a difficult wetland area and over a stream and requires a bridge. And there's a lot of permitting, additional permitting work that we've had to do, which is why I went to the Conservation Commission first. Because if we couldn't get through the Conservation Commission and get them to approve this design, we really wouldn't have been able to proceed with it. And finally, the development will make a financial contribution to the town's Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that. This development plan, if it's approved, will resolve a long-standing neighborhood controversy over how to develop this parcel of land in order to have a development that would reflect the quality and character of the neighborhood. Neighborhood residents, including the developer, turned discussion of this issue around into a positive outcome by talking very candidly. I didn't attend the meetings, but they talked one-on-one, or one-on-group, I should say, about what they needed, what they were looking for. And in order to create a development plan that could be supported, both by the developer, the owner, who was somebody else at that time, the longtime owner of this property, and by the neighborhood. In addition, a group of neighbors has made an extraordinary contribution of their own resources to create the Scotswood Preservation Trust and purchase one lot of land from this development site. Although this plan, like all plans evolving from this kind of process, has compromises in terms of what we're trying to do, and it does require modifications of the cluster bylaw, the bylaw is written to allow such modifications if they're for good cause, and we believe they are in this case. We think this will be an attractive development. It will add value to the town and the neighborhood without fundamentally changing the special qualities of the area. So that's my general introduction. You do have a 17-page narrative from me. Sometimes I do write things that are too long, but I'm happy to go through details. We're happy to address the technical review with you point by point in any way you want to. But I think maybe we would start, if the board is willing, with more explanation of the plans themselves. So I'd like to ask Jeff Kane to take over for a while.
Good evening. Again, my name is Jeff Kane. I'm with LAL Engineering Group. It's been a while since we've been in front of you. I'm the engineer for the applicant. And as Marion said, Wentworth Farms Estates is a 10-lot cluster development. Lot sizes ranging...
If you want to point out features, you can do it with this.
I don't want to overcomplicate myself.
All right, well, don't, it's okay. We have it.
10-lot cluster development with lot sizes ranging from 20,000 to 60,000 square feet. See, I'm already trying to do it on screen. The roadway accessing these lots coming off Ford Ranch Road is a 1,000-foot curvilinear designed dead-end road with a cul-de-sac at the end that's been designed to service fire vehicles, buses, trash trucks, things of that size. We do have one bridge crossing or wetland crossing coming in off Ford Ranch Road. Can you point with that?
Right there? Is that the bridge?
I can't even see it.
Everybody see that who can see that far?
Okay.
Okay.
That has been designed to meet the Mass DEP streams crossing standards and associated wetland replication area. Can you point that out? In the north of the project, that will take the place of the fill area that we need to come across that roadway.
Is it working?
The roadway itself is located in a
I got it.
30-foot right-of-way. It consists of an 18-foot wide paved two-lane road with additional 4 foot on either side of unpaved pedestrian access way. The road has been designed for vertical and horizontal sight and stopping distances, including intersection design and sight distances at Ford Ranch Road. These have been in concert with the Mass DOT design criteria. The road is serviced by utilities, underground gas, town water, underground telephone, electric, on-site Title V compliant septic systems, and as Marion mentioned, a stormwater design compliant with the Mass DEP stormwater management standards. When we last spoke with you folks, there was a couple of outstanding issues that you had mentioned us to look at with this plan. And one of them being the roadway width, with a question with the fire department. We did go ahead and get a letter from the fire department saying that access width was acceptable. And one of the reasons they do want to have typically a 20-foot wide, but we do have 2-foot additional shoulder on each side of that road that can be used. It's a stabilized shoulder, so it could be driven on. So the effective width of the road is about 22 feet. So with that, they were okay with the width of the roadway. The other one was to expand the level area for pedestrians on the side of the road. When we initially came in at preliminary, I think we had a 2-foot level area, and the request was, could we at least make it 4? So that's been done. So we do have that 4-foot level area on either side of the road. And last one, we will look to realign the driveways with the proposed houses so they wouldn't be located directly across from each other. And I believe we've done that. If it hasn't, we'll do it in the next iteration, but that's a pretty simple fix in that regard, so.
I think you did.
Still
it.
can't
Well,
see where you're
actually,
pointing.
that
Yeah,
one
that
looks
one
like-
might not be, though. Sorry, we'll change that. That, again, is kind of the project in a nutshell. I know we talked about it with you before. I'm sure you have questions. We have received a technical review. We did sit down with the DPW. We did receive their technical review as well. Before we responded to the comments, we wanted to have this public hearing to kind of compile everything and then come together with, submit one response to all the comments we have and whatever revised plans need to be along with that, so. That's where we stand. Do you have questions?
All right, thank you. Let's go around the table before we go and open up to the public for questions, comments, etc. I have not had a chance to review the two technical review documents we have in front of us. I don't know if anybody else has, but certainly you feel free to comment on those as well. Cheryl, do you want to start?
Can you refer me to which section, when you said you have the flat area? Because I was looking at the sections and I didn't see it called out. I saw it.
If you look
Maybe,
at the typical sections.
You give us sheet numbers,
Yep, I'll
please?
get you a sheet number. It is sheet number 12. And if you look at typical section
that's okay.
between station 3+40 to 9+75, one of the things we did talk about when we were here was that pedestrian access way was going to encompass the lots. Okay, they were going to encompass the lots, but not carry over all the way across the bridge and up to that road. Because once we get into that bridge, we're now getting into fill footprint, and that puts us back into the DEP's purview. And under the 401 water quality, there's a certain amount of fill we're allowed to put in the wetland. The larger we make that footprint, we're going to go beyond that point. So at that point, you can see in the typical sections, we do shoot down to, I believe, a 3-foot shoulder on that side. But along with the roadway where the lots are encompassed, we are at a 4-foot level area, and you can see that in that,
So the 4 feet and the 2 feet are in the same zone? In other words, they're
No,
not...
if you look at, Dan, typical section 3+40 to 9+75, you'll see a 4-foot shoulder. 2 foot of it's loam and seed, and the other 2 foot is the asphalt milling, so it's a non-paved walking area, or refuge area, I think, as we referred to it last time we were here.
So it's two dissimilar materials, so
Yes.
split down the middle.
Yes. And one of that dissimilar material is to back up the asphalt to make sure we can't back it up against a material that's not going to be hard enough to hold that against. You want to break the edges of it. So that's why that material's there. And then we have another 2 foot of the grass strip, so,
Is it on both sides?
yes.
I still have some concerns about the pedestrian safety with that detail. You couldn't do I understand that you need something for the edge, so that means you at least need 2 feet on either side for that edge, is that right? I'm just wondering if you can split and put it all on one side and have a paved surface, that could be suitable for strollers and for
Paved surface?
elderly.
Like a sidewalk, a paved sidewalk? The only issue we have with that, and again, this kind of goes back to what we're trying to make with the country road type of thing. We've got 10 lots on here. So our traffic volume that we're anticipating is extremely low. The situation that's going to occur where there's going to be cars and people, I mean, of course it will happen, that there's going to be there, but the roadway width meets the DOT as far as these local road widths go. You can get 2 cars to pass here safely. If we start adding asphalt in, then we kind of go against what we've done with, not only with you, with the low-impact development, but with the DEP. And that would definitely impact this design as far as redoing this whole thing with runoff calculations.
There is pervious pavement, and I know that some jurisdictions are requiring pervious pavement and for parking areas, et cetera. So that 4-foot section could have pervious pavement, right?
The asphalt millings themselves are pervious, and they do tend to pack down a bit, so you could call that a pervious material. To do a sidewalk for 1,000 feet, or even less than that, in a pervious material, would be, to say the least, cost prohibitive. If you've ever looked at a cross-section of what the pervious pavements are, typically they're about 3 feet deep with stone and everything else that uses as its pervious base.
So what's your base below this then?
It's typically about 8 inches down, that's it. And that's what a typical
Proposed,
sidewalk would be, as opposed to, and not just that, you're excavating out about 3 feet and then bringing stone back as your pervious base material.
So what makes it distinct that a vehicle can go over it versus some other?
Typically, what you're talking about, there's something they call either grass pave or something like that you've heard about. There's a plastic grid that goes on top, and that grid's designed for an HS-20 type car loading. That would make it so it doesn't compress down. And that grid is almost like a honeycomb, and it's filled with stone or something like that.
That's what you're proposing?
No, that's not what we're proposing. No, I'm sorry. What makes ours work for that?
Right, because what I was suggesting is the pervious pavement can be asphalt, it could be some other material as well, but, so you had said that the 2 feet on either side is suitable for a fire truck
Right.
weight vehicle to go on it.
Right.
So I'm asking, what's the composition of that 2-foot strip that allows it to take that load without causing
Gravel and
damage?
asphalt millings. The difference in what you're talking about with the pervious pavement is the sub-base that's used for the actual pervious design of it. And it's not a strength consideration at that point. It's more of a volume surface area for infiltration that you're dealing with under a pervious pavement.
Well, I can tell you that I live on a lane that's probably 15 feet wide, so it's a little bit narrow. And there are 10 homes on it, and my children walk to school down that lane, and other people walk their dogs down that lane. And there's room for 1 car and pedestrians. And you have to be mindful that when you're going down the lane to look for the pedestrians. So I do think I still have a concern about an 18-foot I've been consistently concerned about the
Yes,
18-foot
absolutely.
width without adequate place for a pedestrian. And a pedestrian could be someone with a stroller, someone with a walker or a cane. And they're going to have to be in the street because they won't be able to use that 4-foot, not with a change of material halfway down it. So I still have a concern about that.
Anything else right now?
Right now, no.
Danny, do you have any comments?
Not now.
Okay.
Thank you.
April.
So I was hoping we could talk about
the open land. I was a little confused by the narrative, which, by the way, Marion, I think you did a very nice job in this narrative. It was very, very specific and very helpful. But this one piece I was a little concerned, not concerned about, but confused by. So I was hoping we could just review that.
So any particular aspect that's
Well, just the
confusing
30
you?
and the 35 and the 16%.
Oh,
I wasn't
okay.
sure. I was trying to go
Oh,
through
yes.
how does that meet this
Very
the requirement.
confusing, yes. So let me give you an introduction and explain the issue at this site.
Can you direct
This-
us to a sheet?
I'm sorry.
I would look at the
Well, I
property
guess it's the
plans.
lotting plan. the
Property
lotting-
plans, right?
Yeah, the lot plan,
and
sheet 4,
5 will show
which
you.
shows you the areas of open land, but there are 2 sheets. If you look at the second sheet, you'll see that what we've included in our original proposal was,
She doesn't have plans.
We're sharing. I think
Sorry
we're
about
sharing.
that. I just noticed our new member didn't have a plan set.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I forgot them. I have them
Okay,
at home.
okay, good. Okay, sorry about that.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
in our original plan, we proposed
you.
that
I'm
the
good with-
right-of-way from Hillside Street, which we are not going to use to access the development, even though we own it. Other people have deeded rights to use that right-of-way. We were proposing that it could be open land. But that is inconsistent with a provision in the bylaw that says that,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, just, that, what she's talking about is on sheet 5. You'll see
Yes,
Yeah, I
that.
see
it's a
that.
second sheet. So it's inconsistent with the bylaw, so if we were to do that, you would have to modify that requirement. But alternatively, we are asking that you approve 30% rather than 35% open land, that you exclude the right-of-way as open land. It will still be common land, it will still be managed by the homeowners association, but it won't be part of the open land, and allow us to do 30% rather than 35%. And so I've given you a table with a whole bunch of statistics in it, which show you how the open land calculation comes out if you include the Hillside Street right-of-way as open land, and how it comes out if you do not include the Hillside Street right-of-way. That's why there are 2 different sets of numbers on that table. And so what's the thinking? It's not strictly speaking open land, because it's a right-of-way with other people who have rights to use it. The big issue in developing this property from the start was increased use of that right-of-way. The neighbors, the people who lived on that right-of-way, who had rights to use it, didn't want it to change, didn't want it to be used for access for any more lots. It's a dirt road right now, and it's been in existence probably from before the time that the subdivision was created in the 1940s. But it does serve lots that were created in the 1940s subdivision of some of this property. However, because it's inconsistent with the definition of open land, you may choose as a planning board to not allow that, and then we are asking for a modification from 35% to 30% open land. This bylaw normally requires that 35% of the land be designated as open land. So that's a choice. It's something you may want to think about. I know it's kind of, the numbers are confusing, but we've worked them over very carefully. They are correct in terms of the different percentages and that kind of thing. Other than that, in terms of the way we're treating the open land, I believe it's consistent with the bylaw. The open land will, and in this case, we're not proposing any pathways or any improvements or any recreational structures or anything except drainage areas. There will be some drainage areas in the open land, and I don't know if there are any, there may be utilities going under, that's allowed if there are, but there are no improvements. It's intended, the open land is intended to remain as it is. And that's part of the purpose of the way this development's designed, because when you look from Ford Ranch Road, you see a lot that hasn't been developed. When you look from Hillside Street, you see a little dirt lane. You don't even really see the houses that have access to it. And if you were to improve that way in any way, it would change the way the area looks. It would certainly be less rural looking. The proposal is, as the bylaw requires, in this case, we would be choosing to have the homeowners association manage the open land and maintain any drainage structures that are on it, and be responsible for making sure that it's not used in a way that it's not allowed to be used. The bylaw does require that a conservation easement in that case be granted to the town of Milton for the open land. I didn't include that in the application because I missed it somehow. So I have written a conservation easement, and I will be giving you it. It's just a draft. Usually, you ask to have the conservation easement approved and recorded at the end of the development process, because it takes a long time, because you have to go to the Department of Environmental Affairs, you have to go to the selectmen. Maybe it won't take so long in this case, but just in case, it's not something that you ask to have approved at the point when the actual permit may be approved. So does that
Yeah,
help you?
that's perfect. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Another question I had was, there was a reference in the write-up about the vegetation along the boundary of lots 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm just curious to know if that was, it says there's some, if the applicant would agree to this condition, and I'm assuming that's something that the residents, the butters had requested.
Yes, or at least there was talk about that over months previous, and that was what we suggested, was that if we couldn't leave the trees and vegetation at the edge of the lot in place, that they would have to be replaced with comparable trees and vegetation. Now, we really think that the lot owners are going to want trees and vegetation along the back edge of their lot, but it's not something that should be left up to the choice of the lot owners, because the adjacent lot owners on Ford Ranch Road would like to still see trees and vegetation and not the back of a house if they could. It's not saying it's going to be a perfect barrier. You'll certainly see something, but that's what we're proposing, and we're offering to have that as, we would agree to a condition like that. That's why it's in there, because it was discussed.
And it's based on what's in existence today? There was no measurement or anything like that?
No, this area is, it was a field, and this area was part of the field. It used to be open, and John Cronin remembers taking Boy Scouts out there to go camping sometime in many decades ago, but not that long ago. But so it's grown up, and there are a lot of trees. Some of them are scrubby. None of them are huge, magnificent trees, But there are plenty of trees on this site, and there will continue to be a lot because of the conservation, because so much of this area is within 100 feet of conservation restricted, wetlands and that kind of thing, that the Conservation Commission is going to have to approve any trees being removed within 100 feet of those areas. We have a map that we prepared, I believe Jeff has it tonight, that shows you how much of this development area is actually in those conservation areas. But on those lots, the ones you're talking about, for 2 and 3, and you can see, those lots don't happen to have that blue area on the back of their lot line. And although I don't know that the...
2. Maybe a little bit into. Oh,
No, that's 3.
that's 3, yeah.
But I think I said
2 through 5.
2, 3, and
2 through 5.
2 through 5. 2 through 4, it should have been probably. 2, 3, I don't know what. 1, 2,
These are the
3, 4.
only
Yeah,
two
2
that
through
wouldn't
5 is
have-
what I said.
These are the only two that wouldn't have conservation.
Right, but I mean, it's just, the agreement would be that along that back line,
Right.
lot line, any lots that have that back lot line, that you would maintain that barrier. So that was something we came up with, and it was in preliminary discussions, and we just thought we would say at the beginning that this is something we think should be done.
So I guess my only point is, I think, given all that we've gone through with Pulte, we should probably find some way to define that a little bit more, with some more specificity.
It's not it can't be very big. And the reason is because if you look at the proposed design, it's because of the septic systems in these lots. These aren't huge lots, of course, it's a cluster design, the lots are smaller. We have septic systems in the front yard. And so the house isn't going to be up next to the street. That doesn't mean there can't be any distance, but we didn't propose a distance. We felt it would be better to say we maintain what's on the edge. We can discuss it, and whatever, we'll see what you feel is appropriate. It's not, we can tell, you can see if you propose a distance like 25 feet, for example, of vegetation, you can see that the backyards are going to be, shortish. Not impossible, It depends on how you like to develop your land. I personally like trees and shrubbery, and lots of natural, but everybody isn't like that, I guess. In any case, that's why we have that in there.
Thanks.
Alex?
You think 25 feet might do it?
We've talked about
Show
it.
us what 25 feet is. Do you have a
Yeah,
scale?
do you?
I can draw on here if you,
Or just point is fine. I mean, you don't have to draw on your plans if you don't want to.
engineering expertise, you can do 40 scale, 25. Something like that. It doesn't leave much. I mean, I think the idea would be to at least to provide screening, and anything that's taken down, to put something back to screening. I think one of the reasons, Mary, we didn't want to come up with an actual number like that, because in some of these cases, it may be very problematic to locate everything between septics, house, yard, and the screening. So I would hate to lock into 25, put it that way.
I'd be pretty conservative, but I think, there should be some way of defining it.
Yeah. I think we should come up, I think there has to be something, because it has to be in the homeowners association. There
Yeah.
has to be some type of
Yeah, I
way to
think you need
move
to come
forward.
back to us with something
In
for
the
that.
town farm that we just approved, we had the same issue about the compressed backyards, but Pulte bit the bullet.
In the end, they did, I know.
What distance did you use?
Oh, that was a whole
Oh, that
different,
was-
That's a different
that was a-
ballgame.
there was supposed to be 100-foot, no-touch area.
Did they use sewer or septic?
They're using a sewer.
Yeah, no, it's different
that-
in all that, but why don't we come back with a number? Shall we do that? And then you can debate it and, see
Yeah,
what
I mean,
kind of...
my interest here is just making sure that if this is something that I very much applaud the effort of the neighborhood and the development team to come together in an agreement. I think that's great. I think everyone should follow that path. But if one of the considerations for the neighbors was that there was going to be a vegetative screen, I just think we should honor that in some way. And, once the lots are sold, it's sort of, and once our approval process is over, we've lost our control here. So I think that the suggested path is a good one, that you guys propose something, perhaps in,
Mr. Hamilton, you can come up anytime. You're one of the applicants, so you can speak. You don't have to wait to be recognized right now.
That's a stone wall that's on that property line now. I don't have a problem with some evergreens and stuff along the wall and making it, because it's not, Ed Mantel has worked with us, and he wants privacy to stay in his backyard, and I have no issue with it. I wouldn't want backyard to backyard and one looking down into his pool. So, to put some nice evergreens along that, and whatever's there now can stay. I don't want to go right up to the stone wall. You gotta leave a buffer zone. The thing of it is, if you bring it in so much, there's no backyard. If someone has kids, what are they gonna play in? It's all like scraggly tree stuff now. There's nothing big there. It's a bunch of new growth. Some of it's dead, some of it's growing.
What about if we give you just a landscaping plan just for that, to show you what's proposed? Would that be good?
Well, we're dealing with 3 house lots here, and I think the owner could work with those folks just to come up with something that's acceptable.
Yeah, I can work with Ed and whoever else that
Even
wants
if
to
it's
talk
something
about
that-
what we can plant
Right.
there.
Like you-
That's our property line and pool that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you can come up with something that could be better screening. What's out there now, you have tall, mature trees, and you don't get a lot of screening from those types of trees, including the pines.
You can see right into their
Right,
backyards
so
from the
maybe-
middle of this property.
Maybe the
Nothing's
idea
there
is
now.
not the distance of natural, maybe it's putting in something that's a fuller evergreen that stays, not like a white
It gives them
pine.
privacy year round.
So why don't you come back with a
Right,
proposal?
that's what we'll say. We'll
So I
let
think
the-
we're gonna want the public to weigh in on it anyway.
Okay.
So let's come back with the proposal, everyone can look at it.
Okay.
Sure, hold on, Alex. You can come
I
back.
just want to comment on that. In the site planning, in this kind of compact strategy, to have the driveway and the garage come in on the side is actually using up a lot of your open space. You should consider whether you just have your the driveway come right into the garage. It would free up a lot of your land area, and it might allow for you, I don't know, I know we have garage issues other places, but if you're looking at having a yard or not, and you have a lot of asphalt, I mean, maybe that's where you want a basketball court, but if that's the way that it helps you get a better buffer for those 3 lots, it might be worth
Got
looking
gorgeous
at.
front yards. I'd hate to see a wall of garage doors. It's just become.
Well,
I'm with you on that.
Let me just say this. This is not a plan for the precise development of and placement of houses and driveways on the lots. What we are going to say is that we think you should have a condition that the driveways cannot meet on opposite sides of Wentworth Farm Road. That's something we talked about a year ago. And I think we tried to do that on these plans, just to show you how it might work. Maybe we failed to do it on one of the lots, but I think the design, that's the whole point of not, these aren't all supposed to look the same. These are going to be lots that are going to be purchased, and people are going to either have houses built maybe by the same person, maybe it'll be by different people, but different builders. But there will be design work to be done to make best use of the lot. So I think those are good points. It's just that I don't know how you could condition that. I think you'd have to say, this is a good idea, you should remember that you might be able to do this too, to
Well, I
preserve
think we do
space.
want to think about that zone then also in terms of regrading, because right now, I like the grading plan, but if there's no requirement to have to follow this grading plan through here, then, you know, what's to keep somebody from coming in and doing quite a bit different from this when they go to build their house?
Don't we have to follow the grading plan?
Well, to an extent.
I don't know. I guess-
Every one of these houses, with the exception of lot 3 and 4, will have to go to conservation. And that's where they've got their own tree thing as well. So every one of these ones have to come in with their own house lot design.
But these are the ones we're talking about, don't they?
Yeah, these three don't have
These
to.
three don't have
Well,
to.
two of those don't, two of those don't. Since
Just
we
two
are
out of
only,
10.
Two.
right, but we are only talking about 3 abutting properties to this subdivision. And I think what we just discussed with the owner working with the direct owners, we come up with a better plan for actually screening these properties as opposed to us just putting an arbitrary number and saying 25 feet's gonna do it for you.
You
Because
just have to have something that's enforceable, though, because.
Yeah.
if it's part of the homeowner's
We can
documents.
have something that's enforceable.
Right.
And 25 feet it's the quality of the screening as,
Right.
That's
That's
why
really
I think we
important.
should come back with a plan that is more specific, that you will have in your hands, and if you want to, you can tie the permit to that plan, and it has to be maintained. You know, 80% of the growth has to be maintained,
But
that's
you
how you
wonder,
do
in the
it.
same token, could the screening that the owner is talking about be on the abutter's property? In which case, we wouldn't have it on the plan, but if they can come to some type of agreement that's gonna screen it on their property if they want, that could work as
or
well.
it could be on both.
It could be
I
on
think you
both.
should come back to us
I
with
think
Yeah,
you
we'll
need to
figure
talk
we'll
about
work
it.
out.
There's a
But
grade there.
I just don't wanna throw an arbitrary number out there, because if you
I don't
go
think
out,
you
look at
should.
25 feet off this wall, you're not gonna get much screening.
In terms of the question about grading the lot, on these lots, I guess what you're saying is, so I guess I didn't I mean, if you're showing grading on this plan, isn't that the grading that everything depends, I mean, that's
Well,
how
like
the
you said,
drainage
every
plan
house
is.
every house could be
Yeah.
slightly different. Every one of these
Yes.
lots are gonna be purchased, so will it be exactly there unless they go with this house design? Potentially not, but the same token, we show the amount of grading probably needed to construct, at least this is done based on what we've seen for the soils for the septic system, which is really gonna control everything on the site as far as the grading goes. Height
So
of
are
the
these
ground-
septic system areas locked? This is where the septic system's gonna be, or is that also part of the house?
Well, no,
design?
right now it's locked because we have approved perks from this town that show in this area.
So, because it-
Anyone could buy this lot and
Yeah.
decide that they want to put the septic system
That
over
was my
here.
question.
As long as they go re-soil test
Yeah.
and meet all the required setbacks, they could do that.
because in previous subdivision and, not in cluster, but in previous subdivision applications, we've actually designated the area in which the house has to be built. It doesn't necessarily follow the design, but we've put a buildable area around it, which helps to protect the grading plan. So that would be another option, which is you essentially give a perimeter area around each of these designs that would allow for flexibility in design, but would preserve generally the location of the house, so that you're preserving that grading plan except in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that where you're looking at that particular zone, I'm not sure, I mean, like, as you said, a lot of them are conservation restricted, so it's probably not really necessary from our point of view, except for those couple three.
All right, well, these lots are much smaller than conventional subdivision lots.
Yes,
And-
because it's cluster,
Obviously,
right.
the idea of the cluster. And to start limiting between, and again, conservation, we've got 25-foot no disturb. And then we've got another, we've got the 100-foot buffer, we have to prove that we can actually do this when these folks come to build these houses. And now we're talking about potential screening of some of these lots, so we're taking up more area. We keep taking more and more area, and to say, now you're locked into doing exactly this, it's
That's
become
fine, so
too
we're just
restrictive.
talking right now anyway, we're not, I don't think there's any
I would just hate to
conditions
see
coming
that
to the
type of
table.
restriction. If we look at the grading plan, pretty much, the majority of lots are regraded. And,
Yeah, I
we
noticed
talked about that with conservation, because we do have to go in with them, that's fine. But they understand, without sewer out there, the biggest driving and controlling factor is the septic system out there. They're fairly decent size, and we've got decent material out there, but that's the controlling factor when you get into a design without sewer. The height of that groundwater, where that septic system can go with the right offsets, the size of it based on the house you're gonna have, that's the controlling factor. Now, you take that area out of the lots, and again, you see you're squeezing smaller and smaller. So to put more and more restriction on these, I think starts getting a little bit unfair.
But to the
That's-
point that what the neighbors are going to see, if you push soil towards them, then that's different than if you don't.
Well, no,
So
but
that's why the grading
Well-
part is important.
Yeah, but.
But you can't fill the backyard,
Yeah.
and you can't give them runoff, you can't force water to
Right.
an abutter, it's against the law.
Yeah, the grading's different. When you're talking about changing the grading to fit a foundation, we're not talking about, piling up berms of soil back here. You don't see that on this grading plan. That's not the intent. That would never happen.
The contour that's there is pretty much
Yeah,
gonna
it's
stay the
just-
contour of the property.
It's just showing you have to blend in with neat things.
I know
that's all.
that's this plan, but that's what I'm saying, is there's nothing that prevents somebody from coming to buy the lot and then apply for a building permit for something that has a different grading plan than this. That's what I'm
Yeah,
understanding,
but they
right?
still
No,
can't,
right.
they still can't, if an engineer designs a house in a septic, puts it on a lot, he has to prove where the water and runoff, that he's not pushing water to an abutter. That's a law. I mean, you force it to someone else, then you've done it
I
wrong.
mean, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're concerned that someone's gonna come in and somehow grade these lots to make them unpleasant and aesthetically unpleasing. I mean,
No, it's a protection that we can offer to an abutter that is enforceable. I mean,
What is the
it's nice to
protection?
say now that we're not doing anything that's, we're going to do our best to do some landscaping here, and our grading plan is not doing much that would be harmful. But if somebody down the road, after you sell the lot, can change that differently, then that protection's gone. And I just want to make sure that the protection that people think they're getting here is something it's in our permit somehow.
if the protection's aesthetically involved in the aesthetics and what the abutters can see, then that protection we're putting in is based on screening that we've just discussed. If we're talking about now locking in lot features and screening, I mean, to me, that's belt and suspenders. If you can't see it, you can't see it.
Well, we had another application that we spoke about before, which shifted a lot of topography and shifted what a neighbor was going to see to have 20 feet of fill in the back of that lot. Now, that's significant.
It
We
is.
worked with them and got them to revise their grading plan to step that back some. And we could do that because that plan was getting locked in. What you're telling me is that this grading plan here is probably only locked in for the road, is that right?
No, not at all.
No, because
All-
you would dam up the water.
Yeah.
You have to make the lots
But-
be able to drain themselves.
The level that you're talking about with 20 feet of fill, I mean, that's at the far end of the spectrum of
I
things
use
that
it as
happen.
an example, but the concern
it's
is
a good
the
example
concern.
because that's the type of development you may want to put some type of controls on it. This is a typical subdivision design. You have to show grading, and we did this based on conservation, that we're showing our drainage plan works, as Mr. Hamilton alluded to. The grading here, if you look at how the numbers, it's not crazy grading. It just has to show that it's workable. And one of the things it would show, if when we went through this exercise, if you started seeing all these hills and valleys, then you would have issues. And if in the plan you're talking about, you probably did see those in the contours. You probably saw lots of fill and piles and things like that. This doesn't show it because it doesn't fit with this type of neighborhood. There would be no reason to do what you're talking about as far as something that would put detriment or aesthetically unpleasing to the neighbors.
Well, somebody
to
could
fit
say
that
they want a
grading.
walkout basement. They could tell their builder that they want their first floor up.
And
You couldn't do it there.
Why
You-
not?
You would flood your own basement. There's nowhere for the water to go.
Why, they could design in, I read that they each have to put their own
No.
storm drainage structure on site. Isn't that what's in the narrative?
No.
No, that's
You- you
that's
can't
just
do
for,
that.
that's just for downspouts. That's just for infiltration from downspouts.
If you-
That's not a storm
The
drain
stone wall is
structure.
here. If the house was right here and you wanted a walkout, you would have to dig a hole here in your backyard. Where is the water gonna go?
Need a well.
You'd be a pond in your basement. You can't change the grading that's out there now because that whole place slopes down into the town forest. If you change it, you're gonna dam up your own property.
Again, the lane that I live on, there was a house built within the last 5 years. They brought in a lot of fill, raised the floor level, and they put wells around the trees so that the trees were much lower because that's where the existing grade was, and they built their floor way up. So
Well,
they could get a building permit to do that.
one thing I will say that you probably don't have, is that this has the controls, is again, going back to the septic system. And if you have sewer, your height restrictions, you don't have any. You can do what you're talking about.
So-
When it comes to this, there's height restrictions over the top of these systems as well. So you can't do what you're talking about as far as putting grade up and putting tree wells in. There's already enough constraints on these sites inherent between the septic systems and the grading and the drainage and the small size of the lots, that what you're talking about, I understand could happen on occasion on different areas, but
So I think,
try to
look,
control
I think
that.
our job as a planning board is to be consistent in our approvals throughout the town. I just finished a cluster at the last meeting, you know, and it was through significant scrutiny, has lots of conditions on it, but it's a bigger site, doesn't have the same conservation commissions, but we're gonna have to ask a lot of these questions to be consistent.
Oh, I
And
understood
there may be conditions that we have to put on, because the nature of our board, of our role is not to trust, it's to protect, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there are gonna be things that we're gonna have to talk about and maybe condition and work around. For instance, a lot of what you're talking about makes sense, but maybe this plan right here is very helpful, because it shows us sort of areas that you can't touch without going back to Conservation Commission. So, to Cheryl's point, because I think topography is very important to this board, it always has been, whether you can see it from an abutter's parcel or whether it's you driving up the street, we work hard to keep the contours of the land in the natural state, helping us to visualize where there will be potential topographic impact and where there's no potential impact because of the other constraints you're talking about would be helpful, because I think it helps us better visualize what you're both trying to say here. But ultimately, we have to honor the guidelines, and we're entertaining a bunch of waivers. I'm sure lots of them will be granted if we issue the permit, but we need to do it in a way that's consistent with how we typically issue one of these permits.
Just as you said, Brian, there's only 2 lots on that whole development the conservation doesn't have jurisdiction over. Every other lot there, trust me, you're not filling the backyard with conservation. You're not changing anything.
But you only have 3 or 4 lots that have direct abutters, and those are the ones that we're talking
But
about.
there's only 2
Yes.
lots.
So the question is how to deal with it.
Yeah, but there's only 2 lots that you could do grading on. The third lot that abuts the other house has conservation. You can't go build anything without them approving the plan. So it's only 2 house lots out of 10 that you're talking. The rest are all controlled by conservation.
But the people who have and live in those 2 houses are going to want us to make sure that we do our job.
Yeah.
The best we can.
Yeah,
And it's not saying that you're going to do something and you're not telling us the truth. It's when it comes back to somebody buys it and they go to do something, it's very clear in the documents what they're legally allowed to do. And that's really what we're
But
trying
and
to
even
do.
the building department too, when you start going for these house permits, I mean, there's a certain maximum driveway grade you're allowed to that is gonna control that as well. So there's already fail-safes in place in some of these things. I mean, to take it to that extreme of filling a lot in to bring a house up higher, I understand what you're saying. Of course, you have to protect these
There's
folks.
layers to every permitting
Exactly.
process.
And I just hope
Concom
that-
and planning board and building departments, they don't always agree, so you end up where you end up.
And you gotta mesh all those together, and come up with something, and that's part of the protection that's in there too. So I just hope that we're
Part
dealing
of the
with three
excitement of being a
abutters.
developer, you get to figure it out.
Being,
I think a site visit would be a big
Actually,
help.
it's one of my notes, it's one of my notes.
I think that would be a big help so people could understand how you couldn't change it because it wouldn't work.
One of my notes for when we
I
get
would
there.
also suggest that some further explanation of how the septic system requirements affect the whole lot and what you have to think about, only because I've only learned, practice in the last couple of years, more about septic systems, because most of the time I haven't dealt with lots that had septic systems. And it's a much wider control area than I realized initially when I started looking at this. So you've mentioned it, but I think it might be helpful to explain it a little bit more, maybe something in writing or maybe just something at the next meeting. But that would be another suggestion. And yeah, there's all these layers, we just have to maybe help you. If we think we've got it covered, then we need to show that we do. And you certainly understand the problem with the neighbors looking up at these lots, and we talked about the screening, but the grading is hard to, at least hard to explain, I think, that maybe
Yeah, they
it's
need
not
to see
necessary.
it to
but
understand it.
maybe there isn't any need for anything else, but if so, I guess we need to demonstrate that.
Site walk, while we're on the topic, I think that is appropriate. Do we want to try to do it before the 11th? Because I think that will leave us I can do it separately. You don't have to go around my schedule.
I'd like to do it before the 11th. I don't know if anybody else needs that in.
We have the week of the,
We've got daylight savings time, so we can do it.
do it later.
Basically,
So we've
anytime.
got the 8th and the 9th will likely be at town meeting. Our meeting is on the 11th. Does anyone object to the 10th? Other than the fact we're all booked that whole week?
I don't object to it. I just have my kids at some activities. So what time are we
I
thinking
was
about?
thinking,
If you do it before town meeting.
We could do it on the
well, the
9th.
10th we have town meeting off. Oh, I see, you see, before town meeting on the 9th? That's an
Oh, like
interesting.
6 or something?
Yeah, we could do it how much time do you think we need?
You can't.
To walk back to that site, you need about 20 minutes.
Okay.
That's it.
The engineer will not be available that day.
I will be there.
but Todd could be
I'll be
there.
there with the
I
plan.
think we don't have any, when we go to our site visits, you just point things out to us. We don't have any deliberation or
As long as you're
comments.
okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, yeah.
Right,
Okay,
so
so-
9th at 6?
9th at 6
Does that
PM.
work for everybody?
The 11th thing.
Okay.
Alex, you might have to help them understand you gotta come in the dirt road and where we're gonna park is on hillside and everything. It's not that simple.
Well, parking on Hillside is, people do it all the time. But Hillside has no sidewalks.
Right.
And
So walk carefully.
hasn't had any sidewalks for a long time. And Fort Branch
9th at
Road
6.
Okay.
was built with 2 sidewalks, one on each side, and both sidewalks have overgrown.
Right.
So you can't use either sidewalk at this point on Fort Branch Road. So I think that the idea of a solid surface on the side of the roadway should be adequate for safety of pedestrians, given the fact that it's a dead-end road off a dead-end road. In that connection, the way should be available for emergency access vehicles. It doesn't have to be paved, it just has to be available.
I don't know. I mean, that just kills that.
What?
Bless you.
I said, that house lot already has a lot of conservation on it. Now you're gonna put a
Bless
dirt
you.
road through the
Well,
lot.
you have to be able to get into the area. It's not just the end of the
You're gonna have
road.
to go straight across a house lot, all the way across it.
You can't go around?
It's all wetlands. It's right, it's that lot right there, the last.
We
of
looked
the
at
curve.
that actually quite a bit,
Lot
but it's
10?
not very
Yeah,
good.
Lot 10, yes.
Lot 10. No, we have to walk around like we did on conservation.
I mean, if you do that, the fire truck's going to drive across someone's yard.
5.
Well, hopefully the fire truck would not need to drive because it would only be if the bridge fell down.
Right. I mean, that's
It would be
why,
emergency access
problem.
for emergency vehicles.
and there also is no fire hydrant at the end
Right.
of that road. In fact, there isn't even, the fire hydrant is in the woods
Energy, that's
off
awesome.
the right-of-way.
You're saying
So
the
it's
right
not a
of
good
way,
fire
at least up to
access.
that lot line would be available for use, just like you say, it's an emergency, they could at
Yeah.
least get
No,
up to
I mean-
that
Well,
point.
maybe if you make the roadway available, and then they can stretch their hoses over the lot.
Well, they could come in from the back of that lot and walk across, but I mean, to put a road through the middle of a house lot, I might as well say, who's
Well,
gonna
no,
want the lot?
Look,
I
this
understand.
is, the,
I mean, it's been done, by the way. We
I
have
know,
lots
but
of
I'm just
houses
saying,
that
I
have
might
grass
as well just say
pavers
the
across
heck
for
with the lot, 'cause
emergencies.
who's gonna buy it?
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of them have that grass pavers running out to the road. We've
the
done it.
dead-end road is above our usual standards, and when that happens, we usually like to have an emergency access, and I think that you've got probably close enough. Give it some thought as to how close you can get for emergency vehicles.
Can I make a mention, if you look with that, what you're talking about, the right-of-way comes in, the bottom right of the screen.
Yeah.
Right, and now look at the top left where the cul-de-sac of Ford Ranch Road is. You have the access you're talking about even off of that cul-de-sac into the same back of a lot. Actually, you have,
It's all wetlands now.
Yeah, but it's really hard to get,
it's not wetlands. Yeah, it's a house there, but it's a house down the bottom right as well.
We're not doing that.
Saying if
No.
you're talking about dragging hoses across something,
Well, I mean, that's,
They're going to drag hoses
That's a-
across
Yeah.
something anyway.
Yeah,
They're not
so
going to
I'm
ask
saying
your
that
permission if
access
something's on
exists
fire,
there
by
today.
the
That's what I
way.
was gonna say.
and that's not across a
I mean,
wetland area.
Stonebridge Lane has no sidewalks and it has no second access and it's almost 2,000 feet long. And it's a dead end.
Yeah. Well, it's a thought. We certainly talked about it. We thought it was pretty difficult to get in there, and that's why we didn't propose it. And we're trying to not touch that right of way because that was the desire of some of the neighbors. So,
all right, well,
No.
let's move on from that.
yes, thank you.
The Conservation Commission says that you're going to submit an O&M plan, operations and maintenance plan for the drainage.
Yes.
And that will be part of the deal. You've got to get that approved by Conservation Commission. And I guess I was going to say that when we did 131 Elliott Street, we did the zoning, and we had to change the zoning twice before we got to a plan that worked. And when we did the cluster development zoning, we learned a little bit about being too rigid. And so we provided for modifications where there are, where there's good cause and there is no significant harm caused. And so you've asked for some modifications, and I've looked at them, and I think that I don't see that any of the modifications that you asked for are likely to result in significant harm. I think that we probably are going to need to discuss affordable housing and a payment in lieu of providing a lot. And in a situation like this, you don't actually have to provide an affordable unit because the cluster development bylaw doesn't produce units, it produces lots. So what happens is that you, it requires that you set aside a lot which can be used for affordable housing if you can find someone to develop it. But there's an alternative that you can, or an alternative we've discussed, that you can make a payment in lieu of providing a lot. And in this case, that seems clearly the way to go. So at some point, we're going to have to determine what sort of a payment we're going to require. And that point probably isn't very far away.
Okay, before we go to the public, I just want to quickly go through my own, see if I had anything else in here. You show a landscaping plan for the swale at the front entrance.
Right.
Wondering if we can get a similar type plan for the rain garden in the circle. And there was one other swale. I assume they're sort of rain garden type swales
They
that
are,
are
and what we,
proposed.
in the details section, we did discuss this with DEP during our time with the 401 water quality and under the NOI application. The swale and the rain garden have a seed mixture that's put out by someone called New England Seed Mix.
Okay.
And they create a wetland-type seed mix that works
Great.
in rain gardens and moist areas. They create a diverse mix
Yeah.
that works for this type of site.
That in
And
here?
that's what, yes, that's, we will call out in the rain garden details.
Okay,
so.
thanks.
And then this landscaping plan came about with our discussion, site visit with DEP. They wanted some more trees, and they said, well, we're gonna have to put a landscaping plan together. So that's why this is in the package now. That's part of that permitting process. So.
Great. On sheet 9, you have Wentworth Farm Road, then you have in parentheses private, 30-foot wide, and then you have 18-foot typical. I know that the 30-foot wide refers to the right-of-way, but if you could clarify that, that would be helpful, please. I want to come back to the trees. I think I want to talk, as far as the trees go, you have the conservation plan. Typically, we actually require a tree maintenance plan to show what trees will be eliminated or maintained. I think we can probably work around your conservation plan for that. And then you do have a reference for a typical tree planting where the trees will be planted. We probably want a reference to our shade tree committee to sign off on the planting schedule that you have here. So that
Shade
just
tree
a note.
committee?
We have a shade tree committee in the town, so we just need a reference on that.
As long as they're.
We can just put it in the special permit. We don't need a reference on
That's
your
fine.
plan, so. we'll-
Brian, speaking of trees, I think in the case of Woodmere, is it, or Woodmere? Okay. Where there's multiple lots and they're not going to be built at the same time, we had a restriction on removing trees until actual construction on the lot occurs, so that you don't get a clear cut of all the trees that are there. So I'd like us to
Probably a
consider
similar
something
condition.
like that here.
Okay.
Pretty small, the
Again, you
area.
can only clear 2 lots that are under conservation, all.
Right, understood, but I know what she's saying. I mean, you basically don't clear the lots
You don't want to
until-
go in and clear everything and just put a
until we
road
have
in.
the
and have a
lots
big-
sold, to the extent that you can, obviously, to the extent.
It'll be a
it's
big
practical.
help too, when you walk the site, you'll see, there's nothing bigger than that out there.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
all new growth.
Okay.
So it's no clear cutting on a lot until construction begins on the house and
So the
driveway?
lot is ready to be,
Ready
building
to
permit
be-
issued or whatever.
You have a
something
building
like that.
permit or whatever.
It's not an uncommon requirement.
Yeah, no, I understand, I just.
Compliments on your guardrail, it looks very nice, because guardrails can be quite ugly. But I do want to mention your light fixture and just cross-reference that. I'm not sure if this is a placeholder, but I think we have a typical
We do.
on now.
Yeah, if you do, we're happy
We
to
do,
use it.
so we need to
Yeah,
put,
we use it.
we just need to put the typical light fixture in, that's all.
Now, which light fixture is you talking about?
I don't know, Sarah will have to tell you which one it is.
Are you talking about something at the entrance
Oh,
or
I'm
on the
sorry,
bridge?
the streetlights.
Yeah, there's one
Streetlights.
down into the lot.
Not many, but
I think
But I
DPW
thought the
has
streetlight
it.
was already there.
No, there's one at
Oh.
Ford Ranch Road that's on an existing utility pole now. That's at the intersection,
So
but we're proposing a new.
you have a
as well.
detail
But the new
here,
one is
that's
on the
what I'm
bridge,
talking
isn't it?
No, it's not on the bridge.
So
it's
you're
off
going to
the
do
bridge.
another streetlight at the entrance?
No.
He knows.
I'll talk
Yeah,
to you later.
all right, I'm sorry.
I'm just referencing your
I
detail. I
just don't
honestly didn't
understand
even
it.
notice where the light
Sorry.
was.
It's in there, don't
I'm
worry,
just
yes.
referencing the
And
detail.
DPW has the light. I think it's where Tim got the last one, Bill, is that right? You did? Okay. John Thompson has it though, or you have it? John Thompson?
But it's a private way, so it's a private light.
Yeah, we thought the light should be designed as, dark sky compliant and
It
as
is, the
small
one
as
that we
possible.
use
If they
is
have a
also
ni-
dark
If
sky.
they have a nice light,
That's fine, but
one
we
we're
typically, I
proposing
mean,
is-
we often require the same light on private ways too.
That's fine, yeah. The one we're proposing is nothing special. so-
I just thought that you could give us some guidance, or if there's another source
Yeah,
for
D-
how
DPW will
it
give it
should
to
be
you.
defined and conditioned or whatever, that's,
It'll all be in there, but whatever we send you will meet the criteria that we'll put in the permit anyway. The material for the bridge, what is it? Just curious.
It's a stone face, it's concrete, we have an
No, I
aluminum.
mean, I'm sorry, the deck.
The deck would be asphalt.
It's just an asphalt
And then
deck.
we do have a shoulder, again, you'll see in the typical section, it's across Millings
I
shoulder.
saw the
Yeah.
section. I was just curious about the deck, okay.
Okay.
That's all I had. Okay, so if anybody else has any questions or comments for right now, we'll go to the public. So I'm going to ask the applicant to step back, and we'll have the public come forward. Public, you identify yourself with your name and address, please, and please address comments to the board, not the applicant. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this application? Yes, sir, come forward.
On top of you now. They roll, these chairs roll.
Hi.
I'm Ed Rensel.
Okay.
I am the abutter in this lot right here.
Okay.
Basically, we're sticking approximately 3 homes directly behind my property line. But I have a question. I was under the impression.
Sorry, could you just
Oh, I'm
either
sorry,
hold
yeah,
the mic or
yeah,
sit down?
very
so we
good,
can
all
get
right,
you on the
very
record.
good.
Thank you.
I was. Oh, I live at 110 Ford Ranch Road. I'm a direct abutter to the development. And I want to start up front, but I actually went around the neighborhood and got signatures to get this project going. These have been going on for years and years, and we got sick of the worry as to the threats of 40Bs, churches, all these things that he was going to do because he didn't get his way the very first time he came across the planning board. So I said, we got to put an end to this. He wants up to 10 lots. Let's give him the up to 10 lots, and we'll see how it falls. Right now, it looks like you're trying to jam too many lots in too small an area, but that's something that you'll have to work out with him. My question is a buffer required in this type of development? I was under the impression that there would have to be a natural buffer left between us, the abutters, and the brand-new development. And I don't see any natural buffer. There's nothing, he shows nothing. He shows lawns going to lawns, for the most part. That's all I see. I don't know. I read the bylaws, and I remember seeing that a buffer is required. All right? Now, I am, like I said, I'm for the development. I'm also for myself and for my neighbors. We don't want to be affected by this project. And there's a reason. So basically, we've been talking, and we're saying one of the most vital part of this project is a natural buffer left between us, the abutters, and this project. He doesn't show it. He doesn't show it. I have reasons that we'd want a substantial buffer. We're thinking possibly 100 feet to protect us from flood protection. His lots are about anywhere between 10 and 30 feet above my yard. When you come out and walk the property, you'll see that we're not on level land at any stretch of the imagination. He's way above us. At the far points of his land, he's like 40 and 50 feet above the front of my driveway. So there's a major slope. So one of the reasons we really would like a good buffer is for flood protection. All right. Also, because he's so high above us, right, we want a substantial buffer for privacy. That, I've been there for 22 years, and I've had nothing but woods behind me. The way with this project, as it comes out, right, I'm going to I'll have neighbors that can be looking down into my backyard unless it's a real buffer. All right? That's my feeling. I can talk about the downward effect on the property values of our 3 lots without a buffer being affected by not having some sort of a buffer. And like I said, you people spoke about it also. We don't have a developer that's putting in a road and putting in homes and selling the homes. What we have here is we have a gentleman that wants to bust in a road and sell lots. So nothing's going to go on at the same time. We may be looking at 5, 10, 15 years before this thing is developed out. So what we'll be dealing with for who knows how long, because this isn't like a developer coming in, putting in a road and putting in homes. This is going to be like happenstance development. And so basically, we don't want to deal with unsightly visual caused by development, loud noises because of construction and building of homes for we don't know how many years. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? How long is it going to take for this property to be fully developed? Because, like I say, it's one lot here, one lot there, the way it's not a developer coming in, putting up homes and selling them and be gone in 2 years. This project can go on for many, many years. Another reason that we would like a substantial buffer. So if it happens like that, it doesn't really affect us. We're not looking out at half-built homes, empty lots for years, that's possibly what may happen. That's basically it. I was under the impression, just even the town's bylaws on this type of development, is that a buffer is required, and it doesn't show one on any of his plans. And another thing I really don't understand is that on the other side of his road coming in, on this side, I'm right here, my neighbors are right here, we're right here, right? On this side, it's nothing but swamp and empty land. What I don't understand is why this project was pinned right up against our properties, where if they had just slightly changed the direction of this road coming in, right, they would have given us all sorts of space to have the buffer that we want. All right? Why it was designed like this, I have no idea. Take a look at this lot. take a look at these lots. It's almost twice as big. It's almost like the project is built backwards to the, against us in that way. I don't think it's anything personal, but I think the whole development is kind of backwards. Those larger lots that he has butting up against swamp and open land should be the lots that are up against our property, that would give us the privacy. Why does he have it backwards? I don't know. And as a matter of fact, well, I won't say it, but I had people look at this and they said, is this guy out to get you or something? Why did he build this property backwards? Why wouldn't the bigger lots be on your side so you could maintain your privacy? Why are the small lots to the north or to the east, and the big lots that back up against swampland and open field and forest, right? Why are those lots the bigger ones? And that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll answer your questions. So, Alex, can you just speak to the first part of the question, which is, does the bylaw
Requiring
a buffer?
The bylaw requires that all lots have access to open space, so in a sense, it does require a buffer.
Okay.
I don't know, but like, nobody's,
Or be reasonably convenient to open space, and,
Yeah.
and they may be reasonably convenient to open space without a buffer, but we discussed a buffer, and Mr. Hamilton is going to discuss the buffer with you.
no.
And hopefully, you're going to reach whatever it is you reach.
So,
If and when you walk the property, right, I'd like to
you're
basically...
invited to be there.
Yeah, because I'd like to just show you what this project, how it affects our
So
lands.
the project is on the 11th. You're welcome to be there.
May 11th.
Nope.
10th, excuse me.
9?
9th. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. I'm on vacation. Don't
6
listen to me.
p.m.
Like I say, once again, I state that I actually collected signatures to get this project put in.
Let me just.
So I am not against it.
So, and whether it's required or not, we're allowed to condition a buffer, and we think we've already talked about it tonight. Just to the other point about the configuration of the site, I mean, the wetlands are what they are. You can't move them, and you
Right.
can't build on them. So,
Replace.
and you can't, so that's somewhat of why the houses are configured the way they are.
Okay.
And the big swath of, on 6 here, can you zoom out? I don't know why it's so close up, but. Yeah, so that big swath of area on the bottom there, that's all open space. That's not part of the lots.
Right.
This big square. So just so that we're, the
Well,
lots are actually
like I
pretty
said,
much all the same size.
I've been looking at it more and more. I look at it, I say, why can't the road be moved to the west,
Right, because of the wetlands.
which gives us,
that blue plan?
Yeah, I can see it.
But how does that match up with the line that we have on our drawing that shows, doesn't match up,
houses,
this
these
line?
planned houses are in the wetland. So,
Oh, yeah.
That blue does not match up with our plan on
I don't
sheet
understand what
7.
No,
that
that's
is.
100 feet.
the
So what he's
buffer.
showing is the blue shows 100 feet within the wetland buffer, which means the Conscom gets a purview over it, is what the blue shows. It's actually not wet. It's
No,
purview
but
of
this
wet.
line is called out as,
There's a 25-foot no disturb that you can see in that picture, that plan behind you. Can you see that line that parallels?
Why don't you come up and talk into the mic? You can also describe, you might as well
this
say
one.
why the lots are where they are.
Watch the hand.
Yes, you can also address
okay,
that.
I see it. All right, it's right here, then I didn't mark that.
So there's a 25-foot no disturb on those lots on the bottom of the screen. You can see the dash line that parallels the wetland line. We can't touch anything beyond that 25-foot. So effective lot area is actually probably about the same on both sides. That's why the lots are configured as they are, because you don't get the effective area on those lots. There's no need to, trying to push it up against one of the other projects.
can I ask you, who determined I'd like 10 lots? Do you normally take a piece of land and say, I'm gonna put 10 lots in there? Or you say, I have a piece of land, I'm gonna see how many lots I can
You have
put
to
in?
do a marriage of cost of what it does to put the road in to make sure you can sell the lots and what it's gonna be worth and things like that. So it's a give
Well, I
and take.
understand that.
right.
I just-
So you're looking
but
at a
basically,
site
but-
that.
But who told you to put, who
Well,
designed this? and
no, well, you
Who
have
told
to-
you to put 10 lots?
I'll answer it. You have to look at this, you've got a bridge that comes across, you've got a roadway, you've got a cul-de-sac, you've got paving, you've got underground utilities, so there's a certain number that you base this off of, and that you have to get to a break-even point, because they're not doing this for a charity, so you have to find out the marriage between what the costs are roughly, because we can't pinpoint them, and how many lots it would take based on current sale value to see what you could do.
So one thing we did
We
when
don't
we-
allow interviewing, just so you know, so you can
Yeah,
continue
like I
to make
said,
comments.
we also, when we went to the Hillside neighborhood, the gentleman went to, Mr. Hamilton, went to the Hillside Neighborhood Association, spoke to us, and basically his agreement, our agreement was not 10 lots, but the agreement was up to 10 lots. And guess what? If 10 lots doesn't fit, it doesn't have to be 10 lots. It can be 9 lots. It can be 8 lots. It was up to, not demand 10. It was up to 10 lots. Please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this application from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Mike McGrath.
Oh, hold on, we got to get you to the microphone first.
It's Mike McGrath. I'm in a butter at 132 Ford Ranch Road.
142?
132.
Thank you.
It's at the cul-de-sac.
Okay, go ahead, thank you.
I'd like to echo some of Ed's points, Mr. Rentel's points. When reviewing the cluster development law, it seems like the intention of the law is to take a new development, drop it into an existing large lot of land, separate it by open spaces so the existing residents don't get affected. And that's why there's existing bonuses for doing that. One of the factors for that is the calculation of the open space that's set aside. It seems by my read, the open space is supposed to be a significant portion, 35% of the lot, of the total lot, and it's not supposed to include wetlands. So now I think what happens is if you actually put together a development with those numbers, you would have open space over here behind these houses. There would be surrounding the lot of open space would be 160,000 square feet of open space, of non-wetlands open space would be surrounding the lot. If, as Ed said, we put a 100-foot open space buffer there, that would only be adding 60,000 square feet. If we added 60,000 square feet, the proposal would still be short by about 45,000 square feet of open space. So that's a big concern for us. To me, it looks, based on what I've read, there was another preliminary plan put together for normal development that showed 9 60,000 square foot lots. I wasn't able to find those plans before the meeting, so I haven't seen it. But I'm kind of confused as to why, instead of building 9 normal lots for the zoning that are reasonably going to be approved by this board, they would build 10, 2/3 acre lots instead. So it seems to me like financially, 9 60,000 square foot lots which fit the neighborhood would actually be more financially viable than 10 substandard lots. So those are the couple things I wanted to say. In addition, the houses on this side of the proposed development, besides my house, have all been single owner. All these people have lived there. They built their house. They've been there for 30, 40, 50 years. My house has had a couple owners, and we're not planning on going anywhere anytime soon unless there's some major changes. So it's definitely a close, tight-knit neighborhood. We regularly get deer, turkey, other animals walking right along that lot line within that 100 feet of space that we're talking about behind those properties. Those deer walk all the way down from Hillside. They come all the way down that property, all the way down to my property. They walk around the back of my property. I believe they go to Mr. Whiteside's property, and then over to wherever they go on that other side. So there's a significant animal impact on from this development.
There is one reason. The 60,000 square foot is a measuring size for lots. The actual size of lots required is 80,000 square feet, and so you couldn't get 9 80,000 square foot lots in. But the cluster bylaw says that in order to determine number of lots, you use a formula which provides for 60,000 square foot lots.
No, I was saying that if they actually could put 9 60,000 square foot buildable lots there, why wouldn't they?
Well,
Instead of 10,
it doesn't comply with
30,000.
it doesn't comply with the zoning. They can't do it. It's a totally artificial construct.
Okay,
the
I see,
60,000
just for
square foot.
measuring the initial plan. Just for measuring how many of the
Right,
baseline
exactly.
numbers can be used for the houses.
Exactly.
Well, then I just reiterate again that number baseline is also considering that 35% of the non-wetlands area of that property is being set aside as open space, and that the property will be surrounded by open space. That's the way I read the law. So to me, it's not even a cluster subdivision, the way it's being submitted. But that's up to you guys to decide.
You want a buffer.
We want, I don't even want to call it, I mean, Ed was calling it a buffer, I want to call it open space. I think the way this law is designed is to surround the new development with open spaces. Now, if they can't figure out how to do that, then I'm not sure if it's sufficient. Maybe there is a way to do it, maybe, like Ed said, it costs a couple lots. Maybe some lots get smaller, they go down to 20,000 square feet, maybe others get bigger in a different direction. He's got some leeway on how to move around the lots to figure it out. So without that open space, I definitely would say this would have a significant impact on our house. We are also on the property of our house, on the usage of our property. We have a pool that backs right up to the back of our yard, so with a 30-foot a 30-foot setback of a connected property, we would have people right there with no privacy. No, I know we talked about privacy there. 25 feet was thrown around. If you want to put privacy in there, make it official, make it open space, right? Join it with the rest of the open space, figure out what a reasonable, based on the law, is amount of open space that can be used that's not, that actually helps the site development, and add the open space to the plan. And that's the way the law is said to set aside that privacy. It shouldn't need to be like in the bylaw of one of the lots to say there's 15 feet of land you can't touch. I mean, it's supposed to be the open spaces, as far as my read. So, that's it. My wife also had some concerns. I don't know if she wants to come up and talk about.
Okay.
We have, one of the other problems or questions we have is, since we're on that end, we have the whole swale drainage system is right on our corner of our lot. That we don't know much about the swale system, but one thing I've noted is the whatever the flaring is, that is coming out pretty much right on our lot. The developer has 12 acres to work with, and it's going to be right on the lot line is where the water is draining.
It's feet from our fence, where our dog
And
run
our
is, and
yard,
our
and-
pool, where our kids play. But for me, I don't really understand it. I've looked at lots of different swales online, and I guess maybe I didn't read enough of the narrative to know exactly what you're talking about. You talked about planting and seeds, and I'm picturing, of course I have little kids and the mosquitoes and everything. I'm picturing like a swamp with lots of sewer water or whatever is coming out. So I just want to better understand
There is a lot of water in that area.
that how all of these properties, they are obviously going to change the way that the rainwater drains out, the way that everything drains, and it already is quite a slope, as Ed also mentioned. And so if you're looking at it, it literally will all slope down to that corner where that swale is, and I guess I want to better understand it. So I would love to see examples of similar swales, or what you're describing. You said a company produces seed, so I would like to see pictures of similar swales where that seed is planted, and I'd like to see how this plays out in a development that's already been there for a while, maybe. Like, do we have examples of cluster developments, similar cluster developments, that, how does it play out when these properties are changed so much? I just don't know.
First of all, can you identify yourself for
I'm
the record?
sorry, I'm Sarah McGrath, and I live at 132 Ford
Thank
Road
you.
as well.
And then I'm
So,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt,
no,
but we
no
just
problem.
need to get that on the record.
I mean, I think I want to say also, like, we come from Cambridge, so we are not worried about, I don't necessarily feel like the privacy is necessarily the issue. I'm not worried about meeting neighbors, seeing people. I am more concerned about changing the environment so much. So yeah, a privacy hedge would be helpful, but I'm just a little concerned, like Mike mentioned, the deer coming down, and it really will change that environment. So putting up pine trees, as they mentioned, is not necessarily going to solve what we're talking about as far as open space. We're not concerned so much about necessarily what we're looking at across the way. I think we're a little bit more concerned about how it's going to change the neighborhood and the feel of the area, and also I'm very concerned about the drainage. So I just want to know a little bit more about what that swale is, and then we can talk more about the open space stuff too as it comes in. Or buffer, or however we want to call it. Okay, thank you.
So on the point on the drainage, there is a drainage report. I think that's the one that's 181 pages long or something that you held up. So it is studied. It will also be peer reviewed
Okay.
by the town.
Okay.
So what happens is the engineer comes out, they put together a plan and a stormwater management plan.
Right.
All of that is submitted. We do a third-party review of that, which
Okay.
we have to talk about, Bill, as to who's going to do that. And then the town engineer will also speak to it. So it is vetted by a third-party reviewer and the town, in addition to the engineer that's damping the plans for the project. So
And that will include the analysis for this site as well as the abutting sites? So that would include the analysis of the impact of the plan for my property?
yeah, the goal is that no water can leave their property.
Well, I mean, clearly
Unless
there's
it's
water leaving the property if they have a drainage, they have a drainage outlet right there in the corner of the property. I mean, there's clearly water leaving the property.
And
onto my
that's
pro-
draining
and that's
onto our
Our
property.
property.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, you can come up and speak to that, yeah.
Make it easy.
So, as part of our conservation review, Mass DEP has put out stormwater regulations that all projects have to meet. And as part of our conservation review, we went through that process. They are the controlling agency, the jurisdictional agency of that. That's actually part of the notice of intent of a wetland submittal, is that's actually connected to it. You have to submit your drainage design to these folks to review. And we've done that. Now, the structure you folks are referring to, it's called a drainage swale. It's actually a best management practice that's put out by DEP. That discharge there, what it's designed to do, and what per the stormwater regulations you have to do, is a certain amount of flow, runoff, leaves this site today. Obviously, you can see the wetlands up there today.
Yeah.
That structure, and along with the rain garden that's in the cul-de-sac, and there's another small swale up by Ford Ranch Road, they're designed to retain some of this more extensive water that's going to come, because now you're changing the land composition. You're putting in pervious, you're putting in pavement. That's designed to slow this down so it leaves the site today as the same rate
Okay.
it does. So that's an attenuation structure. The swale itself, again, is a best management practice, no longer just a detention basins. They
Okay.
want to make these things above and beyond. The seeds we're talking about, there's a wetland seed that mix that goes in there. What that helps with is nutrient absorption. So now when you get this water down here, you don't just have a grass pond that's holding it.
Yeah.
You have a type of soil matrix and the type of plants that actually absorb some of these, what they call
I just
pollutants
want to
from the
see that.
roadways.
Like, I hear you, and I get that there's data and numbers and
Right.
all, and I hear that, but I just want to see it. So I just want to better
And-
understand what it's going to
Okay.
look like,
We
that's
just
all.
need photos at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah, and what I'm saying,
That's all I'm
just to
saying.
speak, I know you're concerned with the mosquitoes, and I completely understand that too. Part of the design is that these have to drain within 72 hours.
Okay.
So that doesn't
So they're not gonna
happen.
be, like,
Right.
swampy.
So again, going back to conservation,
swampy.
we went to conservation, we've got the approval, we've already submitted to conservation all our drainage plans and calculations. We've had them review it. We've had DEP review it twice.
Yep.
We've now had technical review done 3 times on this project to
Right.
make sure we're in compliance
Yeah,
with
we
the
probably
stormwater
don't need
regs.
third party.
So
I
that's what
forgot
I'm
we
saying.
already had
Don't
done
think that this
Concom
is
on
out
this.
there.
We've had 3 engineers on it.
Right. So we've had it, we've had a site walk with DEP. We've gone through, we've met all the requirements of the stormwater policy on this.
Okay.
And one of the things they do look at is, again, flooding of adjacent properties.
Right.
And this is looked at for up to a 100-year storm.
Okay.
And
So if it starts flooding, then the recourse is what?
if it starts flooding, as you can see, you're in the lowest point of the site. There's an emergency overflow. If this was to, quote-unquote, fail
Mm-hmm.
and flood, the contours run parallel to that property line. You're to the
No, we
upper
own that
line.
side too.
Yeah.
We own the
have-
left side too.
You own the left side?
Yes.
In the wetlands?
Yes.
Okay, but I say, it's not gonna cause physical harm to
No,
you.
our home isn't there,
Right.
yes.
It's designed for the 100-year storm as it's
Okay.
supposed to be. I'm saying, worst-case scenario, for some reason, you were to have water leave this site, it's not gonna go up, it's gonna go down
Right,
into the
right.
wetland, right?
Well, we want it.
We
want
get,
it
we
to
get
go-
how water flows. It's not gonna go
Absolutely,
up.
just trying to point it out. to you.
Can you go back to the aerial?
So, just.
Thank you.
Again, just wanted to touch
Well,
base
I
on
guess I
that.
was
was
just
helpful.
wondering if it's possible to move that outlet to point the other direction a little bit.
We can
Because if it's
change the
pointing,
direction if
if
that
we can
makes
get
you feel
it,
better.
because that's
Yeah.
like where our lawn is. Like obviously the wetlands area isn't developed, and if we can push it further out
That's not a
into
problem.
that, like I'd even be fine with providing land to push it further
No,
out
that's-
into
Change
away
your
from
orientation, change
our
your date,
property.
That's not a problem.
Thank
Okay, so you make that note.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Collins.
My name is Webster Collins. I live at 533 Harlan Street, direct to butter. Our family also owns 525 Harlan Street, direct to butter. And I'm even a triple butter because I serve as managing trustee of Scott's Woods Preservation Trust. I'm a direct surrounder of wetlands. I am part of the wetlands that has been discussed here this evening. What I'd like to say, and I think it's very important, is I'm very concerned about these issues that are before us. This is why money was paid to take out of play 3 acres of land here, right directly abutting, which has half of which will never be developed. There is open space right from that land alone. It doesn't appear in any plans. You talk about 10 acres. It's effectively a 13-acre issue here because of what Scott's Woods Preservation Trust has done. So that's one of the points that I wanted to mention to assuage the direct abutters, assuage rather, wrong term, of this issue. The second point that I would like to raise is that the value of their lands will not decrease. It will substantially increase for the following reasons. You have the equivalency on this bridge of a grand entrance off of Ford Ranch Road into a major development where the values of those houses are going to be substantially above the values of the other houses on the street. It will lift the value of Ford Ranch Road. It will not hurt it or do any disadvantage to it at all. I was sitting here thinking of the Ponte Vecchio Bridge. It's not going to create the values that much like in Florence, but the whole point that I want to make is that it's a real improvement to the neighborhood, what is going on here in terms of value. I think the final point I want to make, or actually perhaps 2 final points, would be first on the strollers and the rollators and the 2 feet on either side of the 18 feet. I want to second Alex's thinking on that because I can personally say that no one with a rollator is going to be walking on it. I have a handicapped wife. I can guarantee it, it doesn't happen. I have grandchildren that have been on Harlan Street, a lot more wider than what we're talking about here on the 2 feet. There's just not going to be a hazardous issue or any issue as relates to this internal small subdivision street. And then the final point that I would like to make and close is that you can sense a great deal of effort, a great deal of thought has gone on within this neighborhood to reach solutions that are good for the town. This is Scott's Woods neighborhood. It's a very, very special place. It's a space that is unheard of its type this close to Boston. And we feel as neighbors that we're very, very fortunate to be able to be living here, and we are working every way we can to protect the neighborhood and to enhance it as a real fine part of the town of Milton. And that's why what has gone on for these last 3 to 4 years has taken place.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tara Withington. I live on 71 Ford Ranch Road. I was very fortunate to buy out my parents. This is the house that I grew up in, and I'm very fortunate to do that. I have 4 children, and I just want some understanding where the bridge is going in. I tried to pull up the plans online, I was unable to do so. I just know there's a stake literally across the street from my house where the bridge is going in. I just not quite sure where exactly it's going in, but
Talking about the entrance to the roadway or where the bridge is going on the property?
the entrance,
So where the roadway entrance is?
yeah,
Okay. Off of Ford Ranch
off of
Road.
Ford Ranch.
Is it right where you have the arrow, Bill?
Yes.
So, I'm not sure, I can't really say, but,
See the OR? You see Ford, right underneath Ford.
The arrow, the white
I see the arrow, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The road will go.
So is my house is directly across the street?
Your house is here.
Okay. So what I assume is the entrance is literally right outside my bedroom windows of my room and my daughter's room. And forever, it's been a very quiet street. I am a registered nurse. I work nights, so I'll be sleeping through the day sometimes. I'm just concerned about noise, traffic at the stop sign that's literally right outside my house. I'm just hoping the bridge could be moved down, slightly more down towards the left, so there's no headlights coming into my bedroom windows during the night. So there's 2 driveways, and the main driveway, and what I assume is that where the arrow is, where the bridge would be?
This is the roadway, the bridge is down here.
So where would it exit onto Ford Ranch? Right there, yep. So that's my front walk, that skinny walk there, and then the windows are right outside there. And if it just moved down, you know, at least to the driveway or even to the yard, my privacy and noise level would be hampered if it wasn't moved.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, Brian?
Sure.
Was there outreach done to you with the development of these plans?
Never, never, never. I've been there for 3 years. No one's contacted me, asked my opinion. I've seen people come and go there, seen engineers with pickup trucks. No one's ever spoken to me, and I've been in and out of the house, bringing in my groceries, and no one has reached out to me.
May I ask a question? So your bedrooms are in the small walkway, that's where your
See,
bedroom windows are?
Exactly. That's my front walk, and then my daughter's room is closer to the garage, and then my room and my husband's room is right where the arrow is. And our family room is underneath my daughter's room. So if the bridge got moved down closer to the Wilkie's property, at least our privacy won't be so hampered. But I am happy about the neighborhood. For my kids, other children to play with, I'm not discouraging the neighborhood, but I just wish my privacy is protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, can you come back for just a second?
Sure.
So that last comment was what's going to compel my question. So they don't own any additional land that I can see to the whatever direction that is. I guess the northeast. Would there be a screening option that would work for you that would on your property potentially?
On my property,
Just asking the question.
I
I just put it out there.
I probably wouldn't change my landscape.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, does anybody else wish to speak to this application?
Yes. Hi, I'm Judy George, 52 Ford Ranch Road. So I've been with you guys for 4 years. there's been a lot of work done to get us to this point. And I believe that we have a developer who I think is willing to work with everybody who's affected. I think we've just got to the point where we are today after many, many years. I just want to spend 30 seconds. This all happened because the driveway did not want 3 houses built and said that Ford Ranch Road would be perfect for all of this, and everybody was signing petitions with that in mind. And it was only going to be, and the developer was willing to just build 3 houses. This wasn't about greed. At that time, this was about, they bought the land knowing that it could be built on. It was sold that it was going to be developed back, and I've been there 52 years, so I knew about this land. I was surprised it hadn't been developed earlier. So I think we're at a point right now where I've spent 4 years, I went out and raised money to ensure that we didn't end up with a 40B or townhouses, whatever. And I think we're at a point where I think it's critical that we move forward in a positive way, and the people that are feeling affected work directly with the developer, as you've all required. But I really would like to bring this to a positive close for everybody, because this has been a long, drawn-out for everybody, and the planning board has been terrific. I have nothing but positive support, and I think today we're close to having something I think we can all live with, and I just want to thank everybody for all the work that's been done to bring it to this point. I think, Todd, I think it's important, maybe you meet with the 3 people who are, I knew you were willing to, but.
No one's ever said anything until tonight to me about this, and these are people that signed an agreement, you know, saying up to 12 lots, and I ended up with 10 lots. And I just got blindsided tonight. And I've spent 5 years in this thing, and I've met with Judy, Webb, the association, time and time and time and time. So I feel blindsided.
When did you speak with us 3 buttons?
No one ever asked me to.
You called me up in December of 2014.
Okay, this is what, you're gonna go outside the building.
Anyway,
Okay,
thank you.
You're welcome, thank you, Mr. Okay.
That's not what I did.
I'm gonna, oh, sorry, another person to speak, sorry. Yes, sir, you're recognized.
I'll be quick. Hi, I'm Scott Johnson. I live at 2 Stonehill Lane. I'm not in the butter. I am the president of the Hillside Neighborhood Association, the oldest neighborhood association in Milton, I would add. I just wanted to say that as president for the last 2 years and vice president for the 2 years for that, we have seen sort of this issue unfold for a long period of time. There have been lots of ups and downs. And we had, came together, there was a process, and we landed on up to 10 lots.
For 1 minute. I'm going to ask you to take this outside because the board is trying to listen. Sorry.
The Hillside Neighborhood Association is open to everyone, and especially on this issue, we had several emergency meetings where there was a strong consensus reached that the best option, as of 2 years ago, I think this coming summer, that up to 10 lots is what we supported. And so that is where the neighborhood association landed. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this application? Okay, so there's been a bunch of comments. There's a couple that I want to point out for additional, so that they can be addressed at the next meeting for the purposes of the board and the public. Certainly, we talked about the buffer, and you're going to come back to us with a proposal on that. We have talked about the photos of the plant species, and that would be helpful just for everyone on the board to get a copy of those. I think it would be helpful for us to understand, as it was brought up tonight, and it will probably be brought up again, what the potential, we've done this before with the board, what the potential headlight impact would be as the road exits. So just from the standpoint of how the elevation of the road is hitting and where those headlights would go would be very helpful. Is there anything else that the board wants? Yes?
I would like, and I've requested this on other projects, so I don't think it's unreasonable, a site section that would be through the roadway, which would address Mrs. Withington's concerns, and then 2 site sections, one through lot 4 and 5, to understand sorry, I'm forgetting everyone's names, but the other direct abutters concerns relative to the topography changes. Yeah, Mr. Rentel and Mr. and Mrs. McGrath, right? Thank you, Denny.
Yep.
Just to understand the change in topography across those sites. So if on those site sections, we could have Ford Ranch Road, the existing house, the topography up to this property and through this property, all the way through to the
There's
end.
good examples of those on the Woodmere plan as well as the Pulte.
Carberry.
The Carberry and the Pulte. So
Pulte.
if you want to look at those applications, we can send you something to give you an example.
And what lots are we talking about here?
So 4 and 5, and then the roadway with the bridge.
So Cheryl, it might actually be helpful if you go up and just show on the plan where your section would actually be.
Okay.
So so that we have an understanding.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You
and the
drew,
road-
you drew, okay.
yeah.
4 and 5. Just 4 and 5, and then when the roadway exits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just want to say that's not myself.
Yes.
Just trying to be young.
Anything else, Cheryl?
Not now, no.
Okay. Just a couple other things. We've talked about the stormwater management plan, and you've pointed out, as I had forgotten, but that you've been through conservation commissions. That pretty much vets that plan, and we've submitted it. Tree preservation plan, we've talked about a little bit tonight, and we'll see where we are on the site walk, but it sounds like that may not be necessary based on the conservation commission, but it is something we typically require. So I'm just calling attention to that. This was all in the memo that you received. The limit of work plan and the cutting and filling, which we usually talk about, so that's something that you typically weigh in on. So I want to make sure it's raised early, and then we'll need a construction management plan, which I think you're aware of. That's off of the immediate read on this. I haven't gotten through the full, but certainly you have it. Yes, Mr. Kendrick?
Do you understand what the limit of work plan is, Jeff? Beyond, we have a line that shows the limit of work. But is that,
It's going to be replicated on the stormwater plan and everything else. I've read through the memo. I think it just needs to be clearly shown. We
Yeah.
do have it shown. I think it just has to.
I agree. It just has to be
put out
clarified.
further,
Yeah.
right,
all right,
exactly.
thank you.
I have a comment, and the comment is that I've listened to the various abutters, and I think that I don't hear anything that can't be addressed. And I think that just steady as we go, and we'll get there. Work with the abutters, Mr. Hamilton, and I think that the issues can be solved.
Yes.
Just a question. Do you mind coming up just so that we can get your answer on? I'm just wondering, there was a couple of comments about the construction timeframe. And I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Hamilton or for you, but do you have a sense, I mean, a lot of this is going to be market driven, but we're in a pretty strong market. Do you have a sense of what the build out will look like? I mean, do you have any guesstimate of how long this will go?
You put the road in this summer.
Mr. Hamilton, you'll have to just come forward so it's
sorry.
on the record, that's all.
So, can you just back us into, yeah, exactly what you were just
You
talking
put
about?
the road in, they were concerned about people working up against their property. Well, as this board has already said, there's no clear cutting on a lot unless it's going to be built on. So it's going to stay wooded until it is time to build on it. I don't plan on sitting on 10 lots paying $10,000 a year in taxes on each lot for 10 years or 5 years, because then it's not even worth holding them. So
So you'll put in the infrastructure this construction season
That's
and
what
put
the
these
plan
lots
is.
up for sale right away?
the minute it's approved, I'm going to start marketing. That's the plan. I mean, basically, each lot is going to be somewhere from $8,000 to $10,000. They're going to tax it, from the studies that I've done. So I don't have an incentive to let them sit there.
And just in your professional experience, how long does it take you to build a house like we're talking about here?
Well, it all depends what someone wants, you know what I mean, and how custom they want. That's one of the reasons, I think these won't be sold to builders, I think they'll be sold to homeowners. Most of the stuff in our neighborhood, the houses are being bought by homeowners and they're tearing down existing houses, and they're building what they want. And I think that's exactly what's gonna happen here. It's not gonna be some builder coming in and I'm just gonna build a house. If someone's spending that kind of money, they're gonna buy and build what they want. They're gonna have an architect that's gonna draw the house to their needs, to their likings, and that's what's gonna go there. That's what seems to go in these, that's what it went on Brush Hill Road on that 5-lot subdivision. That was done by homeowners bought them and then a builder built each one for them.
So for each house, a custom designed home, were you talking 12-month construction period
I
or
would say it's
less?
all the 12 months.
Yeah.
You know, depending again what they come up with for design.
And of course, they're not all happening in the same 12 months, but I'm just
No,
trying to give
no.
people an idea of how long.
And a lot of that will be interior finishes as
Mhm,
well, so it's
right.
not like you're gonna have people outside banging hammers and nails and saws the whole
The
time.
lots are not that big, so there's not gonna be, when you walk the site, you'll see, you can't change anything as far as elevations in the backyards of these houses. There's just no way you can, and once you walk it, I think it'll help a lot.
Good.
Good, thank you.
Did you have anything, Denny?
I'm good.
You're good, is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
good, thank you.
All right, so I think we're gonna look to continue this hearing to May 11th. Bill, we
May
have room?
9th, 6 o'clock on site. We'll meet on Fort
Yes,
Vance Road.
correct.
After that, we'll do May 11. You have a site plan approval for a 3-season porch off 333 Brush.
Let's just put it at, what time is that one at?
Didn't do it yet.
Oh, okay. We'll just,
We can finish that one probably in 5 to 10 minutes.
yeah, I've heard that before. Why don't, do one at 7:05 and, or one at 7:10, one at 7:15.
Okay. This will be 7:15.
Great. Just in case the other guys don't show up for some reason. Okay. Do I have a motion for that? Or do I need a motion for
So
that?
moved.
Okay, so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, a couple other things on the agenda. Approve the minutes. Let's jump to new business. We need an appointment for an HR representative on the committee for the interviewing and selection of an assistant town planner. Currently, I'm slotted for it, but I'm actually going to put out there that I think there might be a better person on this board to do that. I think I'm not going to necessarily make a nomination, but just for feedback, I think, April, you've had a lot of experience with this this sort of field of professionals, planning and whatnot, and I think, frankly, I think April makes a better representative than I do to assess these individual candidates from a standpoint of planning and their expertise. And my second choice would probably be Alex as the senior member of the board who's had the most experience with planning staff. I think I'm not qualified as qualified as those two individuals.
So I think that April is our woman.
All right, so can we get a nomination for Miss? Well, first of all, will you accept a nomination?
Perfectly happy to do it.
All right,
sure.
great. I think we don't have to go through a formal process, but I think let's go ahead and say that April's our chair. So, Bill, if you could let Michael Dennehy know to coordinate with April, that may make the process go a little smoother as well with my
See how that
schedule.
went, Denny? Get used to
Good
that.
job with the delegation.
Watch out. We have our committee meetings next week. And don't miss that meeting because you'll have all of them.
Everything.
All right. Old business. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl for master plan implementation.
Okay, so we
Sorry,
have.
could you folks just move out into the hall for us? That'd be great. Thank you.
First, I want to do the member replacement. When we appointed members, or when it's jointly done with the Board of Selectmen, and there's the Board of Selectmen has one representative, we have one representative, and then there's 3 others. And the town collects these forms from people who are interested in serving on committees. And so I reached out to Barbara Martin to see if she had anybody who was interested, because Michael Balfe has let us know that he does not wish to continue when his term is up, which would be 1st of July.
Okay.
So there were
So you're
three.
filling one seat?
Filling one seat.
Okay, thanks.
So there were three, and then one was contacted, and he said the timing wasn't good for him. So that led it to two. So you all received an email with the two. So what we did before was everybody did a secret ballot, and then we saw sort of who got the most. And I think we had to go around the table a couple times.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
But we were picking a lot of people. Can I?
So, yeah, so Tabor Keeley and Ellen Anceloni. I know both of them. So if Tabor's been involved in many things. He's our town's representative to MAPC. He was on the master plan committee that I was on for 2 years. Ellen was on the Granite Ave Study Committee with Brian and April. She also was on the Library Building Committee.
Want to look at this, Alex?
I think she applied to the Historic Commission. They selected someone else. So she's an architect. I've known her for 25 years, and I've known Tabor, really, I met him through the Master Plan Committee. So either one would be a good candidate, I think. So we have to pick one.
All right.
Because we actually talked about wanting maybe to have more on the committee, but that would be another step down the road.
So the process was that they submitted through the town? Oh, that's great. So that process is working.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we, just because someone applies isn't necessarily a reason to appoint that person. It's helpful, but it's an important commitment. I noted that Ellen Ancelone doesn't check the Master Plan Implementation Committee as an interested committee, which
Barbara checked.
seems to me is disqualifying.
Well, Barbara actually suggested to me when she only had Tabor, I said, is there anyone else? And she said Ellen had submitted for historic and wasn't selected. She thought she would be a good candidate. So we reached out and said, Ellen, would you be interested in master plan? So we have more than one option here. And she said, what's the commitment, et cetera, et cetera. And then she said, yes, I would be interested. So that's, the way it went.
Okay, so are we doing a secret ballot?
That's my suggestion.
All right.
We need
Can
paper?
Everybody
Everybody
come
have
up with
paper?
their own paper?
No, we have to, if it's secret, we have to.
All have to say. I'm not sure we're going to know who used the yellow sheet. Very secret.
That's funny.
This is
Too funny.
Don't let me run an election. Don't let me talk about dates. I'm barely here.
All right.
And we will pass these down, not to me, to our clerk.
Our clerk. Okay,
She
you're
will
going to count the
Tally our
votes.
votes.
Okay.
Exciting moment.
Mine isn't going to be
Not quite yet. I'm just taking a quick look.
You have 5? Bill's voting.
Denny's taking a
Okay,
quick
I'm
look.
sorry.
Voted twice.
Okay.
Early and often.
Back to you.
Okay.
So Denny, where was your victory party?
You know what? I was so exhausted. I didn't even have one.
Wow. Did you go on the TV?
I did.
All right,
I
well,
went on the
that's
TV.
exciting, right? You
That
get to
is
go
really
down to the TV,
exciting.
yeah, grow an
And they
enemy,
have all
you
these
get to do-
questions,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that was
And
good.
you're like,
I have no
sitting in
idea
the
what I
living room.
said because I was so tired. But
thing is-
after,
All right. Tabor's our
Tabor?
guy.
Tabor it is. Okay, I'll
Thank you.
let them know. Thank you.
thank you.
All
They
right.
were both excellent, though. I just
Yeah, I think, well, as I said, the committee's actually thinking that it may be nice to expand the size of the committee down the road, but we're going to hold off on that for now. So what we've done is, you see that we have these lead partners, and the way Tim, who was working with our committee, we really were trying to figure out how do you take something that's this thick and digest it into something that people can work with. And so what we did was have an Excel sheet which could be sorted by the master plan had a sort of assigned the lead partners to certain goals and strategies. And so we could sort it by lead partner. And so then the 5 people on the committee are divvied up into those lead partners. Of course, I'm giving planning board, right? Because I'm the planning board rep. So this is our list from the master plan. No editing or, changes by our committee as to who's assigned at the moment, right? So these are the things that the planning board has been assigned as things that they would take the lead initiative on. So we've had some discussions here about what's going to be the priority and who's going to decide the priority and what we're going to be looking at in terms of implementation of the master plan. So I think we ought to begin to look at these in more detail and think about which of these we might want to start taking initiative on. Some of them we already have, and we backburnered them for at least a year or more when Emily was on the board at the time. So this is the summary, and then these are these follow-up sheets, okay? So each one of these strategies has its own page. And so if you were interested in finding out something that, let's say, Park Department was the lead partner on, there would be one of these, and somebody has reached out to the Parks Department and had a conversation with them, they would have filled in some information about that conversation here. So that's a way that staff can kind of keep track. And what we've talked about is things that are outside of planning board that might be under the purview, let's say, of the selectmen or of the town administrator. It would be their responsibility to keep these things up to date, so that when our master plan committee is charged with reporting to town meeting once a year on the progress of the implementation, that we would be able to reach out to each lead partner and ask them for an update. So these are sort of the tracking tools that they can use, that we can use, everybody can use. All right, so it will be my job, maybe the new assistant planner's job, to sort of keep track for us of what we're going to do here. So it's up to us as a board to decide which of these things we want to focus on. Now, the way the master plan was set up, it was set up with priorities 1, 2, and 3. And then identification of something as a low-hanging fruit. So low-hanging fruit meaning it might not require financial resources, or it may not require as much time to implement.
And who set the priority?
This was all done in the master plan.
Okay.
So again, we haven't done any editing of it, it's just organizing of it, and it's trying to set up these tracking tools. So here you can see there's also something called an other partner, so that there would be, whether it's a department or another commission or some other entity that would have some kind of influence or role, or some capacity to help with this particular strategy that's identified. So housing, of course, is something that is addressed in a couple of the different strategies. Our business districts are addressed, so we can go through them, or we can come up with a way that we think we want to start tackling them. My suggestion is that we devote some time to each meeting as time allows to have a conversation about what things we want to move forward on and what way we want to move forward with them. If it's a study, whether we do set up a subcommittee of this board to do that study work like we've had on the condominium working group or Granite Ave working group, or back further when I was first on it, on Temple Shalom working group. But if we have, what way we want to start making progress, and what do we want to prioritize. And it may be that we decide something that was a priority 2 actually should be the first thing we look at. So that's the background.
Okay. Well, thank you for putting this together. I don't know if it sounds like it was done for everybody, but thank you for taking that step as a committee. I'd like to recommend that everybody digest this, look at it, and bring back some feedback in correspondence to what you just sort of said, and that we start putting a regular, 30-minute window on the meetings to discuss master plan, as you said, as time allows, knowing that we're going to be targeting 10 o'clock as our end date here at the latest. But I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to spend a lot of time on it tonight, because I think we're all just seeing it for the
I just wanted to
first
give
time.
an introduction to what we're looking at, what we're thinking.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if people could take a look at this and be prepared to discuss it either at the 11th or the following meeting, depending on the 11th timeframes, that would be great.
We probably should combine that with all the stuff that's been sent to the planning board for action.
Good idea.
Which we have, and we have identified, and that's something that Tim had identified for us, and I just saw fly through a pile in my house recently.
Yeah,
so,
I did too. On my way out tonight.
If we could, Julia, could I ask you to try to dig that up as far as what we had identified as the action items we were going to follow through on? There were about 15 tasks that had been sent back to us that Tim identified, and we had gone through and said which ones we had not done yet.
They were,
probably 3 meetings
they're probably,
ago.
some of them were citizens petitions, some of those
You
were the
did hand it out.
articles that we were sponsoring, like I think it was pre-existing non-conforming.
That's it.
That's
what
it.
we did, yeah.
Do you want it?
Nope.
That was
then it'll
quick.
definitely be lost. So just bring that to the 11th, and we'll.
Send it electronically
Yes,
to everyone.
that'd be great. But yeah, definitely don't give it to me. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Anything else? Jenny, how was your first meeting?
So far, so good.
All right. You like your chair? Because we can move someone around.
I wanted Mike's chair, but I'll fight you for it next time.
I think the first meeting's about to end.
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9:20, not bad. I've been later.